All right, let's stop it right there. Okay. Press one if you can hear me. Press one if you can hear me in the chat. Hello, Patrina Oldfield. Love the music. I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do because I love it too. I love it too. Jim Bob says 23 and me. Have I done that? And I look very Mauritanian today. I don't know. I don't know. It depends. Depends whether you're talking about the ancient ones or the ones there today. But if you're talking about the ancient ones, take that as a compliment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what we talking about here? Okay. Someone already got moved out of the chat, or their comment already got deleted by Surfactant. Wow, Surfactant's already in the chat. Working away with the spanner, or should I say the bow and arrow of the Medjay archers, not moderators right there. We've got Medjay archers. Brilliant. Thank you, Roman. Roman's press one. Lauren Greenfield, press one, saying she can hear me loud and clear. And if Lady Patrina could hear the music pretty well, then that means also the other acoustics are working very well. So that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. We are going to be going in pretty quickly. I just want to introduce you guys to what we're talking about. So I've been a bit cheeky again. Once again, I've been a bit cheeky with the old thumbnailing, and what I've done is I've deliberately been in a little bit let's just use the word cheeky. I've been a little bit sneaky with the thumbnail because the fellow that you've seen in the thumbnail isn't actually saying anything negative. Actually, contrary to what it looks like, he's saying something positive. We're here to dissect something very, very positive that he has to say about the Black community in its relationship to, let's say, the West. And in fact, I got two videos for you today I'm going to be reacting to, and it's in both videos he's involved, and he's essentially he's laying it all out there. Let me give you a background into the individuals whose video we're going to be dissecting. His name is Shahed Bolsen, and I'm going to share my screen quickly. Okay, just do that quickly. I'm gonna go to that. Okay, let's go here and let me go. All right, if you can see my screen right now, let me know if you can see my screen. Again, this time press 2. Press 2 if you can see my screen. I hope you can. And we're just going to go into a biography of Shahed. His name is Shahed Bolsen. Now, I came across this guy in, do you know how you get things suggested to you on YouTube? Thank you, Bishop Lyria. Thank you. Bishop Lyria can see my screen, so I'll take it the rest of you can. But you know how you see people suggested to you on YouTube, across different social media, and it takes you a while before you think, go on, let me click that. Shahed Bolsen is one of those guys. Now I need to do a quick. I'll read his biography and then I'll explain a few things, one or two things about him and myself. Right, biography. Shahed Bolsen is a controversial figure, but has nevertheless emerged as one of the most unique and influential public intellectuals of the Muslim world. Shahed was born in the United States and raised primarily by his mother following the divorce of his parents. The family struggled financially, and Shahed and his brother had to work from an early age to make ends meet. Sorry, guys, if you hear me kind of swallowing and being a bit sluggish tonight, because I'm just recovering from a flu. So, in fact, if in the last video you might have heard some of that in the video in my recording, I recorded it whilst I had the flu, and it was a pretty bad one. It laid me out for a week and a bit, and I've still got the leftovers of it. So just apologies for that. Bear with me. So Second paragraph here on the early life. Even as a child, though, Shaheed was disturbed by the gap between the rich and the poor in America and the materialistic lifestyle which he felt devalued human life. Shaheed attended a local high school and was fascinated with the works of Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and spent hours at the library reading. Eventually, he dropped out of school and spent all his time at the library. Shannon was not a troubled youth. This is a quote. So I take it his original name was Shannon Bolsen. So I'm again that's so I'm now assuming based on this that he's a white American individual of European heritage. Shannon was not a troubled youth. He was very stable. He had his life together. He was smart and funny, and he knew it. He was very critical of America's consumerism and would always find a way of mocking it. His brother said, as he grew older, he began to be more active in practicing those philosophies, getting involved in social work, helping homeless people, worked as a caseworker for indigent families and a crisis intervention counselor in gang neighborhoods. Through all of this work, his family said Bolson continued to research for a spiritual direction that fitted with his views on justice. Okay, so he's pretty what we would call woke, and we need to say that word back. I'm really sick. I discovered that word right as it was being taken out of our hands. I'm a relatively young man, so I've just recently come to find out that that word actually has its roots going back into like the 1920s, 1930s. You know, so and that's 1930s in Black American society, and it was just used to mean awake to social injustices. You know, so we got a word that goes back to a long like back to the 20s or the 20th century, a time when a time when black people were just being allowed access to reading in America. So and that's where it comes from. And today, all of a sudden, it's been taken out of context and used, I think, quite deliberately to mean all sorts of other agendas. But we need to take that word back. So this guy sounds like a very woke guy. Sounds like he was woke to a lot of a lot of the real stuff. What's really going on, um, and he's doing whatever he can in America right there. So I'm gonna go over to Islam. This section is Islam. This is Islam face Shaheed King Bolson. So he's Shannon. I guess he's Shannon Bolson. And oh my goodness, that's thank you so much. Black Rampage in the super chat once again. Thank you very much. Early on, hitting that super chat nice and early for us. Thank you, Black Rampage too. He just says salute. I'm very grateful to you for that, brother. Anyway, I'm gonna carry on. Excuse me. Once again, I got to say, excuse me. I need to get some water. Let's get some water to the side. Oh my goodness. All right. Bear with me, guys. I'm gonna get some water. Sorry. All right, we're back. Just get that stream back on. Right. Right. Okay, I'm back. Right. So we got Shahid. This is journey with Islam. So in the mid 90s, Shahid was attending university after completing his GED and took a class on African American studies. In the course, he was required to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which spurred him to begin researching Islam. At that time, Shahid recalls, I had been looking into many religions thinking I would take what made sense to me from this one or that one, but I had not considered taking anything from Islam until I read about Malcolm X's conversion. Once I began researching Islam, I simply recognized that this was not only the truth, but that in fact it was what I already believed. I just never had a name for it. At 22, Shahid embraced Islam. Press one chat if you can hear me. Please just let me know if I'm um now that I'm back, you can the mic's working and everything's working okay. Because sometimes just taking a little break can cause the whole thing to mess up. Thank you, Wildflower. Wildflower in the chat. Thank you very much. Larry Bailey in the chat as well. Musicologist, thank you. Someone, thank you for being here with us. No, you're not late at all, Wildflower. You're never late with you're never late on a True Black Live. Trust me. Right. Shahid became active in the Muslim community, including acting as khatib for Muslim inmates every Friday at the county jail. So now he's back in America, I guess he converted to Islam. No, he's still in America. Sorry, converted to Islam, and in 1997, he married his first wife in Gaza, whom he had met while she was in the US on a journalism fellowship. After a few years, Shahid moved with his family to Ann Arbor, Michigan, near Detroit, to live among the city's Muslim community, one of the largest Muslim populations in the US. Okay, I didn't know that. Shahid worked on his Arabic, studied Islam with local scholars, became a speaker and activist, and took positions in the Islamic Assembly of North America, helping in outreach efforts in running IANA Radio Net, an Islamic news and information website. In June 2001, Bolsen traveled to London where he gave talks on Palestine. Okay, we just said a big word there. Hopefully, YouTube, I'll go. You chill out, okay? We just said that word. We're not saying anything about it. So just chill your beans. Okay. In 2003, he relocated to the Middle East along his wife and their three children. Although I ain't scared to say what needs to be said about Palestine. But for today, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. We'll wait for that another time. Okay, the trial. So this is where it gets weird with Bolson. It's really, really weird. See, I've already got people in the chat saying Bolson ain't really special. Okay, cool. Okay, I hear you. But the thing here is, how do I say? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's go. I don't see what I really want to say here. It comes across as a bit of a spook because there's very little information. I don't know. Press one in the chat if you know what I mean by spook. It's Brit lingo. It's Brit lingo. Okay, it's Brit lingo for what do you call it? Brit lingo for spies, because there's a lot that's missing out. Normally, when you got someone making waves like this, there's already someone says Fed. Someone says Fed. No, literally, someone says Fed. That's the name of the brother in the chat. Um, like there's nothing about Shahid on Wikipedia. So here's where I need to come in and do a little like what's the word for it? A little not mea culpa. Having contracts all the time. I don't know what's wrong with my brain this evening. Let me just do a little sort of mea culpa. Let me just mitigation of responsibility. I don't endorse everything that you're going to hear tonight. I endorse the important bits of it. I endorse the sort of, yeah, I endorse the important bits of it, okay? But what I don't endorse is like, he's pretty angry and he says a lot of things because he's angry. And in fairness to him, um, his anger is justified. Um, but what I like about him, what I like about his story and his background is that here's a white European Anglo-Saxon heritage guy who has, I don't share his Islamic faith, but uh, from his angle, as an honest as honest as he can be, he's looking at the state of the world, looking at traveling the world and seeing how things are. He's actually come to terms with the fact that the West is a lie, and the history of the West is built on a mountain of lies, a mound of lies, and he's just how to expose it. And he's seeing the fact that the history of the West, when you juxtapose it, when you put it up against the history of supposed alleged lesser civilizations, people who we've been propagandized to believe are lesser, actually we're talking about, morally speaking, he's come to believe that, morally speaking, in the very least, there've been many civilizations, those peoples that the West looks down on, are actually greater and of more value in their civilization, their ethics, in what they achieve, what they actually accomplished, pound for pound. So that's where he's coming from, and that's why it's interesting, because you're not talking about a guy who's a black guy here. You're not talking about a guy who's Middle Eastern even. He's a white American dude who actually seen, he got woke. He actually got woke. So just started listening to some of his things recently, and came across two short videos by him. He puts out these ditties on his channel, and again, so you've got this thing called The Trial up on the screen right now. Okay, in 2006, this is his story. So he's got no Wikipedia page. The only information you can get about him on him is on his own website. Again, sounds like a spook to me. Sounds like Fed to me. I'm just gonna say that right now. Sounds very, very dodgy. Where's that Wikipedia page, bro? I know Wikipedia. I know some folks say not to check out Wikipedia. Shout out Metatron. However, you got to have a Wikipedia page. You got to have a Wikipedia page. Okay? Come on. You're saying a lot of stuff not to have a Wikipedia page. By now, someone's typed some rubbish about you, some ish about you on Wikipedia. So I don't know. Something going on there. The trial. This bit is really interesting about Shahid's life. In 2006, a disaster started in Shahid's life when he was confronted by a tragic and catastrophic event. After encountering an online profile of a German man in Dubai seeking illicit relationships with local women. What? Say what? Don't like Lil Jon out here. What? Shahed invited the man to his home with the intention of persuading him. What? Chap, what? Chap, type what? Listen, my laugh isn't really this squeaky normally. This is the flu. I don't sound like no local women, quote unquote, normally. So this isn't my normal laughing voice. This is my flu induced laughing voice. But you gotta giggle a little bit. So Shahed encountered an online profile of a German man in Dubai seeking illicit relationships with local women. Shahed invited the man to his home with the intention of persuading him. What? Sound a bit like sound a bit like what happened with your man in America not long ago. There was this politician, wasn't it? Nancy Pelosi's husband invited this dude over to the house. That got swept under the carpet pretty quickly. Police turn up at Nancy Pelosi's husband's house and they found a man, naked man with a hammer in his hand. What's going on, councilman? What's going on, congresswoman? Anyway, so Shahed invites this weirdo, this rando, to his house to persuade him against the behavior of illicit, like behavior of illicit relationships with local women online. Okay. But the man was inebriated and the meeting became hostile. Okay, Shahed. Okay. Cool story. Cool story. The man tried to force himself sexually on the family housemaid, and a struggle ensued, leading to the unexpected death of the German. Oh, my days. Oh, my days. Okay. Shahed was arrested and initially charged with murder. He was detained for 7 years on death row in Sharjah Central Jail without having access. They don't play around. They don't play around in the Arab Emirates out there. This guy's going. He's on death row. That's at this stage in his life. He had no access to legal representation in order to tell his side of the story or present evidences. Eventually, after presenting his case in court in Abu Dhabi, his sentence was overturned by the Supreme Court of the UAE. Bolsen was found not being guilty of murder, but was charged with accidental manslaughter on appeal and was ordered to pay diya, blood money compensation, to the family of the deceased. He was finally released from prison in 2013. So the rest of it goes on to talk about how he kind of rebuilt his life back in the Middle East, and he started to talk about injustices done by the West on Middle Eastern nations and whatnot. So, and I'm already seeing some of you in the chat saying, look, this guy is anti, he doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to stuff from our community. I hear you. Definitely hear you on that. I've not actually seen enough of his things to say, yes, I agree 100%. However, having said that, I'm not bothered about his opinions that have gone awry, that I've not seen before. I can only speak of what I see that's inspired this video. I can only speak of what he says as is upcoming, as you're about to see. And I saw this and I thought, no, this guy hits the nail on the head. And it coincided with the book I was reading. I've been meaning to do a review of the book for the channel, but I just thought I'd combine it tonight. I've been reading, shout out to Walter Rodney. Walter Rodney, the late great Walter Rodney, a man of Caribbean extraction. Shout out to the Black diaspora. And he was assassinated, I think sometime in the 80s. It was massive man. I just stumbled on his book in the library here, in the local library. How Europe underdeveloped Africa. Excuse me. How Europe underdeveloped Africa, and essentially, that Walter Rodney goes in. He really goes in. He tears apart this idea that Africa was meant to be it's just innately behind because it's behind. And so it coincided, me coming across this video coincided with me kind of reading into Walter Rodney, and I've not finished the book yet. I'm halfway through it, and I hopefully will be able to finish that soon. Wildflower says, great book, King. You mean you're talking about Troll? But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, thank you. It is a great book. Wildflower, yes, please read the book. Read the book. It's absolutely amazing. He makes a few errors. I disagree with him on a lot of things, but hey, who am I? Who am I to say that? I'm learning right now. I'm learning a lot right now. But anyway, let's crack on with Shahed's video. So just to reiterate, disclaimer. That's the word I was looking for. I need to do a disclaimer. And so just to reiterate, we're looking into Shahed Bolsen's views on blacks in general, and it's a rant that actually doesn't talk it's not talking about, it doesn't start with the subject being blacks. It just happens to have to, in terms of blacks and their dealings with the black diaspora and its dealings with the West. Shahed touches on the state of the black diaspora, but his main focus is the West, and the West is hypocrisy. And he hits a lot of truths. So we're going to go into the video now. Suffice to say, as I've already said, I don't agree with everything philosophically that he says. And I also think, take what he's saying. Some of you might be watching this now and are watching this afterwards and think, "Whoa, my goodness, this guy is he's on a rampage against I don't know, whitey or whatever." But actually, this is a white guy talking. That's one thing to bear in mind. It's a white guy talking, and secondly, he's also a white guy. He's a white guy talking who's seen the hypocrisies of quote unquote the white world or Western white hegemony. And thirdly, he's also a guy who's talking with a lot of anger, having seen the hypocrisy of the world order as it is right now. And so he's talking from that place of anger. So look, fam, we've all been angry before. And a lot of time when we're angry, we say so, we just chuck everything in. We throw everything in when we're angry, when we're ticked off. It don't matter where the bullets fly off to. We shoot. So some of what he says, you're gonna take it with a grain of salt, but it's fire. It's straight fire. Let's start this. I'm gonna share this screen right now, and I dare, in fact, 90% of what he says, I challenge anybody with a different viewpoint to say he's 100% lying, 100% cap, 100% straight out, straight off the bat, he's talking rubbish. I dare you to say that. 90% of what he's saying. Okay. Excuse me. My goodness, that's what I'm talking about. Right. Yeah. No, it is boring. It is boring. It is boring, Wildflower. But however, I will say he's not coming from that place. He's not coming from that place at all. He's talking. I did, and again, suffice this, in addition to that, I didn't even know this guy was a white dude. I thought this guy was an Arab. Till I realized actually he's not white. Looked into his background, and he's an Arabized white dude. So that makes it all the more interesting. All right, let's play the video. Okay. All right, people saying it needs to be louder. Okay, let me see if I can fix that. Okay, no volume. All right, that's still good. All right, press one if it's any better now. So still no sound. Okay. Let's just see what I can do about that. I will restart it. Candace says, please restart it when you've resolved the sound. I will do that. Okay. All right. Can you still hear me? That's most important. Press one if you can hear me. Okay. I'm gonna hit one. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna hit play on the video, and then you can tell me if you can hear that perfectly this time. There was a book, George Friedman, the geopolitical analyst. Press one if you can. Press two. Sorry, press two if you can hear that properly. Press two if you can hear the audio properly. He began by talking about what the world looked like in the year 1900, and then he goes sort of decade by decade. Okay, so people saying that's better. That's brilliant. I'll take the headphones off, and we'll just go with this. Okay, good. Can hear, but too low. I'll turn it up a bit more. There was a book, George Friedman, the geopolitical analyst. He wrote a book in the early 2000s called The Next 100 Years, where he tried to sort of forecast what the world might look like in the year 2100. He began by talking about what the world looked like in the year 1900, and then he goes sort of decade by decade, how radically everything changed between, say, 1900 and 1930, or 1930 to 1950, and so on. And it's truly astonishing how many drastic paradigm shifts took place. Empires fell, empires rose, world wars, on and on. Really breathtaking global shifts. When you look at history that way, it's hard to wrap your head around how many changes can actually take place in a relatively short amount of time. Basically, within one person's lifetime, everything can change. In 1900, like he says in his book, London was the center of the world. There was no communism, no Soviet Union. There was the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so on. The Americans mostly stayed on their side of the Atlantic. And it seemed like this is how things would just be, indefinitely. But just a short 40 years or so later, everything changed. England was demolished in the World War. The Ottomans were gone. The Soviets emerged. Germany took over France, on and on. Really radical, unthinkable changes. And if you go ahead a few more decades to the 1980s, again, it seems like a completely different world. And then on forward to the 2000s, it's remarkable. Everything changed. And when you think about that, when you think about how many huge paradigmatic pendulum swings there have been, that have taken place and that do take place in just a matter of decades, it makes certain continuities even more astonishing. When you're able to maintain a constant amidst the radical changes that sweep over every other element of international relations, global power relationships, international relations, and so on, when you're able to actually keep something unchanged, it lets you know just how important, how paramount it is that this particular status quo remains intact, how important it is to those who are keeping it intact. And I'm talking now about the West's relationship with Africa, because the West's economic relationship with Africa has not fundamentally changed in over 800 years. This is absolutely stunning. If the drastic and rapid changes that can occur and have occurred within the West. So let's stop right there. I just want to quickly say that is the actual focus of Walter Rodney's book. Do I have the copy with me? No, I don't have the copy right now. But I got my copy somewhere in the house. That's the focus of Walter Rodney's book. He talks about the stagnation of Africa. And I know the title of this live is not Africa must be stopped, but blacks must be stopped. And we'll get to that because he goes to talk about, in the second video we're going to be looking at, he goes on to talk about blacks at large. Specifically in that video, he talks about African American, Black Americans, but when I stumbled across this video, that was actually the thing for me. It was this. It stunned me, just the fact that that's so true. So much has happened in the last, let's say, 500 years. Is it 500 years since really the negative interaction with the West between uh, black folks and the West started. And nothing in that 500 years has changed in terms of Africa, a whole continent now, a whole continent's standing on the globe. You've had the rise and fall of Far Eastern empires like the Japanese, the Chinese, um, notwithstanding their relationship with the West. You know, you've had you've had so much happen in the last 5 years, but one thing that hasn't changed, hasn't been allowed to change, is Africa's relationship with the West, or just standing on the globe. Now, if you don't know your history, you might, if you're one of these hicks, these ne'er do wells who'd like to come in the comments of channels like mine and say things stupid, oh, we was and all that. I don't know um how clever they think they are, but they keep repeating the same stupid phrase. Or if you're one of these people and you don't know your history, you don't know your thingamajig from your thumb, then that is actually all of history. That's how it's always been, and that's it, full stop. History started 500 years ago. But I just got done with the video responding to the troll on the other side of YouTube about the Moors. We all know about the Moorish civilization. If you're here tonight, press 1 if you know about the Moorish civilization. We know about the Benin. We're gonna talk about the Benin Empire in a bit. We know about the Ethiopian empires. We know about the Songhai Empire. We know about these, which actually preceded Columbus in getting to America. So there are all these different achievements. There are all these different uh, statuses, different phases, illustrious phases of African Black history on the world scene before this negative, deleterious contact with the Western world started about roughly about 500, about 500 years ago. But since then, Africa's been put on pause. This guy's hitting the nail on the head. He goes on to hit the nail on the head about this and why this is. And it just struck me. I was like, wow, that's so true. That's not a coincidence. Come on. Come on. Okay, let me hit play.
Over just 1 or 2 decades. If that's breathtaking, well, what about the fact that nothing has changed between the West and Africa in basically a millennium? I mean, the relationship was ruthlessly extractive 800 years ago, and it's ruthlessly extractive now.
I don't know what you're talking about 800 years ago. We've not got the same time frame as each other, but I would say 500 years ago. 800 years ago is going way, way back. So maybe he's made a mistake there, mental typo or whatever.
And you can't help but recognize that keeping things this way simply must not only be important to the West, but literally it must be the most important thing to the West. It's so important to them that they have always maintained this status quo no matter what else changes in the world. Wallahi, they're dedicated to the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa more than they're dedicated to anything else. Everything else is allowed to change except for this. This must never change. And it's not difficult to see why. I mean, it's the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa that has enabled the West to impersonate a superior civilization. It's like a con man, a drifter who tries to convince people that he's some sort of an aristocrat or a monarch or something. Well, he needs to have some kind of a display of a monarch's wealth in order to be convincing. And that's been the whole...
Joe, notice he said superior civilization there. He said imitating a superior civilization. Now, he's not... like, some people might hear that and think, you know what? Yeah, okay, all right, you're reaching. And again, some of you in the chat already telling me tonight, this guy is a spook. I said that. I've just got done saying that. Talking about how I don't know. Some parts of his background doesn't make sense. But let's put that to the side. Let's actually just ignore who's speaking and listen to what he's saying, because he actually articulates it very, very well. He says that the West has been imitating superior civilizations in many aspects of its development. Now, I would say that turning point happened when the Moors were kicked out of Spain and Portugal and large swathes of Italy. Okay, when the influence we're talking about Moorish civilization was penetrating into France. They had to be beaten back from France. At that turning point, you had Europe coming out of something that they like to call the Dark Ages. Again, that's pun intended there. The Dark Ages. We're not just talking about dark just because it was a time when we went down civilizationally and no, 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 no. There was still lots of science going on. There was still lots of monasteries being built in Europe at that time. They just went on top. But I think just like Kemet there's a double entendre going on. There's a sort of play on words there. Dark Ages in reference to the color of the people who's actually ruling you. But Europe's coming out of that period. Now they had that period that lasted the better half of 1,000 years, and they're coming out of that, and they're only just coming out of that in as late in, I think the last of the Moors were kicked out in like something as late as the late 1400s or 1500s. Imagine that. You got black kings. Some of them by now tawny, and I recently discovered tawny doesn't just mean tanned. It actually meant it was used interchangeably with mulatto. Europeans, when they use the term tawny, they didn't necessarily mean just a tanned sort of Middle Eastern person. They actually use that word interchangeably with mulatto people. Okay, so we're talking about black and tawny people, mulatto people being kicked out of Europe as late, their empires, their kingdoms being ended only as late as like Tudor, Tudor England times, um, and that's the turning point. That's the turning point, and at that point, that's really quite late in the civilizational history of Europe to be. That's quite late in the day to be having Africans leaving your continent, to be pushing the polities and the states that Africans have built on your continent. It's quite late in the day to be pushing that off, to be actually finally winning against them. So, and at that point, that you don't have that kind of longevity, you don't have that kind of prowess and dominance on in an area without seeding civilization, without having an effect on what happens in the next 200. Read about it. Europeans got a lot of their navigational technologies from what the Moors were doing, how the Moors were traveling through the Sahara, round the western coast of Africa, the northwestern coast of Africa, the Mauritania, round to Senegal. These places are linked. They're all bleeding into each other. I don't know how people like Metatron think black people were just, we're just slaves. No, no, no. This is like a landmass that's bleeding into like proper Africa. And somehow the Moors were just, just dark-skinned Arabs. No, let's not go into that. But that's how late in the game it is before Europe's getting the big sort of reptile off its back of black folks dominating it. Now, tell me that there's not a major influence. Tell me Africans aren't playing a major influence on the culture, on the science, on the music, on everything that's going on in Europe. You can't say that with a straight face. Now, he says here that Europe is kind of like the Western world kind of imitates superior civilization. Now, I digressed massively talking about the Moors there. What I really wanted to say is this isn't actually just a sort of okay, he's not actually an Arab himself. He's not actually a ethnically a black person or whatever. He's a white dude, but from the perspective he's talking from, he's not actually jingoistic. He's not actually being just unnecessarily sort of just put adding some sauce here, as we like to say where I come from. He's not, because you actually go back. You will not hear this, but I'm gonna show it to you tonight. I'm gonna share it with you. Let me just change the screen. What I will do is I'll present something else. Um, okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show. All right, let's get rid of that. Bear with me, guys. Okay. So what we got here, if you can see what I've got on the screen, what we got here is a quote from Diodorus Siculus talking about, he's a Greek historian writing around the period of Roman domination. And he says this. He says, now the Ethiopians, again, when the Greeks speak about Ethiopians, they don't mean the nation Ethiopia today. They mean the black nation, black people at large. Okay. They sometimes can mean different groups of Ethiopians, different nations of Ethiopians. But when they don't specify, they just mean black people at large. Now, Diodorus Siculus says this. Now, the Ethiopians, as historians relate, well, the first of all people, this is how the ancient world saw blacks. They like blacks were held in high esteem. Okay, so I'm discovering a lot of these writings as I do my research on the videos, and I'm coming to terms with the fact that something happened. Something must have happened somewhere along the line. I think Sheikh Diop touches on this very briefly, and he says maybe it was he he kind of he talks about it in big fancy words, but essentially what he's saying is he reckons some kind of jealousy, some type of jealousy took over. And when you break what he's saying down, he says he thinks that some kind of jealousy took over, some kind of people got sick of us being like just the top dogs. That's what Sheikh Anta Diop says in his book, The African Origin of Civilization. Shout out to Jim Bob for that £2 donation. Thank you very much, Jim Bobby. There's no message with that, but thank you very much for that. Really appreciated. But something must have happened, because the more and more I dig in researching videos and whatnot, the more I find out that the ancient world, like when we talk about the ancient world, the classic world, the Greeks, the Romans, other people groups, the Persians, when they write about black people at large, black nations at large, they write with some like reverence, with some esteem. Listen to what Diodorus Siculus says here. Now, the Ethiopians, as history relate, were the first of all people. History, not mythology. They were the first of all people, and the proofs of this statement, they say, are clear. They say that practically everyone agrees that they did not come into the land as immigrants, but from abroad. As immigrants from abroad, but were natives of it, and so are rightly described as sprung up from the land, autochthonies, or indigenous. Furthermore, it is clear to everyone that those who dwelled beneath the noonday sun were in all likelihood the first to be generated by the earth. Okay? This is because, well, actually, modern science isn't far off from that idea. Modern science thinks that everything just came up out of the earth millions of years ago. And as far as humans are concerned, Ethiopia is what modern science says is the birthplace of mankind. So Greek belief in Greek history isn't actually far from modern science itself. But whatever your views on that are, That's by the by. That's just an interesting point. Okay, I'll just skip ahead to see what he says here. He says something about Homer in the Iliad. Homer's another great Greek writer. Um, they also say that the consequence of this is that their piety. So the Ethiopians were known for being very moralistic, very moral people. Okay, but their piety, he says, has been published abroad among all people. And it is generally held that the sacrifices practiced among the Ethiopians are those which are the most pleasing to the heavens. As witness to this, they call upon the poet, who is perhaps the oldest and certainly the most venerated among the Greeks. That's Homer. For in the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, he represents both Zeus and the rest of the gods with him as absent on a visit to Ethiopia to share in the sacrifices and the banquet, which were given annually by the Ethiopians for all the gods together. Quote, for Zeus had yesterday to ocean's bounds set forth to feast with Ethiopia's faultless men, and he was followed there by all the gods. So according to Greek tradition and Greek mythology, the like the Greek gods, you want to tell that to these guys talking about how we need to stop injecting ourselves into like other people's like spaces. Like, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Like, these white boys in their basements really have a hard time coping. Like, really have a hard time coping, because when they actually start doing some reading, like, we was there. Someone needs to break it to them. We weren't just there, but we was kings. you have, you have, like, it's just sad. Like, you read their own, like, people that they mythologize, these like Greek people, and the Greeks and the Romans are saying like, dude, we don't know what you guys are on, but yeah, no, the Ethiopians were where it was at. Our gods used to go and dine with the Ethiopians when the gods were like, nah, I'm tired of this rubbish, this ish. I'm going down to chill with the Ethiopians for a bit, you know? So that's literally what's in again. And this is just one. This is just one. There are numerous. I think I found you can find this online. I think there's up to like 60 classical Greek quotes and Roman quotes talking about the Ethiopians being the you know. Now, that's not to say that you will not get some like that's not to say you won't get um things that are let's just say against blacks, written by the ancient Greeks, the Romans. I'm looking at you, Aristotle. He says blacks are cowards or something in in one of his famous quotes. It's I think Metatron read that out when he was doing his little thing against Kweli Mika. And I don't know, legend has it he really enjoyed that bit. Anyway, so just legend. But he really enjoyed reading that bit. But anyway, let me put that to one side. I really need to stop doing that. But this is what they had to say. This is what they had to say when they're dealing constantly again and again with Ethiopians. They were revered people. You had I've got a scripture here. Okay, this is Isaiah 18. This is another ancient text. This is one I revere very much, and I couldn't believe seeing this for the first time. It talks about it's a message to Ethiopia, Kush. This is a new international version, and it says, go to those who dwell along the rivers of Kush, who send envoys by sea in papyrus boats over the water. Go, swift messengers, to a tall people and smooth-skinned. Shout out the blacks. Shout out the blacks. To a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech whose land is divided by the rivers, because that's what happened with the Nile. It's got many tributaries. It's that long. So it's talking about the Nile there, whose land is divided by rivers. That's another ancient text, the biggest one. Pardon the partiality. Pardon the partiality. Pardon the partiality. Okay? That's the Bible talking about Ethiopians. That's the Bible talking about Cushites. Okay, a people tall and smooth skinned to a people fared far and wide. Now, it just so happens that it's bad news that comes later on in this passage for the Cushites, because God ain't pleased with them. But at the end of the day, on the way to the giving that message, this is the shout out the Bible gives us. Okay, we're talking about. Let's just go back to let's just go to, no, I don't want to go do that yet. But anyway, that's just to say this is actually how the ancient world viewed blacks. So when Shahed Bolsen talks about how like a superior civilization, he's not actually okay. He might be indulging in a bit of like, I don't know what's going through his mind there. Someone might say, "Oh well," a neutral viewer might say, "Okay, that's a bit much. That's a bit rich. He's piling it on thick." But actually, he's in he's in line with what how the world saw many different groups of Africans, many different groups of blacks. What's happened since then? Right. Let's play Shahed and see. No, I'm gonna do that.
Basis for what the West claims about itself being superior. The whole basis has always been that they're materially successful. So, okay, today you have iPhones and technology, you have a high standard of living and so forth. So that means that you must be better. You must be more intelligent. You must be more evolved. You must be more civilized, more advanced than the rest of us. I mean, look how nice their places are. See how much better their stuff is. Well, this is all reliant upon the vicious.
All right, let's try that again.
Extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources, the whole basis for what the West claims about itself being superior. The whole basis has always been that they're materially successful. So, okay, today you have iPhones and technology, you have a high standard of living and so forth. So that means that you must be better. You must be more intelligent. You must be more evolved. You must be more civilized, more advanced than the rest of us. I mean, look how nice their places are. See how much better their stuff is. Well, this is all reliant upon the vicious pillage and plunder of Africa. Without this subjugation, without this exploitation of Africa, Europe and the West would be nothing but crude, emaciated serfs, barely producing enough to survive. Their wealth was primarily derived from theft and plunder, from piracy and slavery, from mass murder and crime. This is just a historical reality. Because of the subjugation of Africa, first through chattel slavery, the extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources, the West has been able to maintain this artificial, unearned status as a so-called civilization, keeping Africa subject, subordinate, suppressed, and impoverished is an existential need for the West. It's the only way that they can keep up the pretense of their supremacy. Because again, the pretense of their supremacy has never been based upon any actual advancement, any actual sophistication, any actual moral or intellectual development. It has always been based on the violent accumulation of wealth and resources, upon brute power, deceit, and conniving. And Africa, the subjugation of Africa, is the most vital necessity for keeping this con going. I mean, right now, the trade relationship between the West and Africa is that something like 70% of exports to Africa from the West are manufactured goods, and imports from Africa are just the raw materials used to make those manufactured goods. So they're taking from Africa what is needed in order to produce goods that then Africa buys from the West, made with their own raw materials. And the West has done everything possible to try to impede Africa's ability to build its own manufacturing base so that they could potentially use their own raw materials, use their own raw minerals to produce their own goods.
Okay, let's stop there. I want to say a couple of things. All right, so the guy's he's just hitting it quick and fast, quick and fast, quick and fast. This is why I really love this video. So he's just, if you got a hang up about people bashing, because you got a lot of these channels out there right now. They're reactionary. They're very, very reactionary, because people, guess what? People can finally, like, lots of people can finally read now. You know, the kind of hegemony that the West and this unjust system had was only sustainable, at least in the fake consciousness that it perpetuated. It was only successful as long as it stopped people literally making laws that people couldn't read, that half of its population couldn't read. That's the only way. But folk can read now. Folk can read now, and a lot of people are not happy that folk can read now because with reading, we're going back into the archives and we're seeing what's really what. So you got a lot of these reactionary channels. Oh, everyone's coming for white man. Yeah, but because we're reading about what you did. You know, so people are gonna be pretty ticked. You know, so okay, so he's just hitting a lot of things here, and I have to stop it because I didn't want to. I want to go on for quite a bit before um I interrupted. He mentioned how trickery, not trickery. What did he say exactly? I'm gonna have to go back. But there's a book. Let me just say this anyway. There's a book called by a fellow called Adam Hochschild. I believe an American. It's either an American or a Brit, and it's called King Leopold's Ghost. Now, guys, I'd like to say I'm not an emotional guy, but I actually am. I cry at the drop of a hat. I think I cried last time I saw Titanic. Yeah, it's that bad. But so I cried at Titanic. What else I cried? I cried at Saving Private Ryan. I cried at 12 Years a Slave. Drop a good tune to some story that says based on a true story, and I will cry. It's pathetic. But Adam Hochschild wrote a book that, okay, fine, I'm an emotional guy, but I dare anybody with red blood cells, a heart, red blood coursing through your veins, and a human heart, to read Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost. Black, white, whatever you are, I dare you to read that book and not have tears in your eyes at some point. What was done in the Congo, what was done to that great polity, that great state, the Congo, do you know what? It doesn't bear, it doesn't, it doesn't, it doesn't, you don't really want to even dwell on it, because you dwell on it for long and it will really, 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 it just turns you to a bitter person, particularly if you're of the melanated extraction. You read Adam Hochschild's book, King Leopold's Ghost, and it's a really good read. It's a brilliant read. But this is a white man who's put it together in an understandable, not in an academic way that pushes people away, but in an accessible way, what was done in the Congo by the Belgians. And in doing that, he touches on how, in trying to convince the Congolese to listen to them, to cede their power, to give them reverence. The Belgians would play stupid tricks. These are just very, very silly tricks. Like they would have like little buzzers in their hands, in their palms, and they would shake the locals. They would first tell them about how they were gods, and they would shake the locals, and the locals would get a little electric buzz going through them. And they would then tell the locals how that was obviously a sign from the gods. This proved the divinity of the white man. So that was a way of using technological advancement that the Congolese, as great as their civilization was, as great as they were as a people themselves, uh, that was a way of like tricking them into. And you might look at that and think that's pretty bait. Like, how did man fall for that? How did people fall for that? But they do it today. They do it today. They've got us bamboozled with. They've got us bamboozled with. It's called psychological warfare. They're doing psychological. That's just a very crude way of doing psychological warfare. And the Congolese were impressed by that because they'd been their civilization was lagging behind by a few hundred years. Because when the Portuguese came to Congo, what they were writing back when the Portuguese came to the Benin state initially, what they were writing back was, this is a civilization on par with ours. Okay, our ships are a bit bigger, and we've got firearms, but as far as that is, apart from that, this is a body of people. Like this is an empire. We've met an empire on par with ours, and we instead of saying, you know what, let's meet these people on a fair playing field, let's deal fairly with them. No, 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 no. They said, okay, we got guns and we got big ships. Let's max the F out of that. Let us max that. Let's max the advantage to the nth degree. And they did that. And fast forward 400, 300 years later, the Congo state hadn't advanced. They were put on pause. And so obviously when people are shaking hands with people who have electrical, who are wired up electrically and are shaking them and buzzing them, of course they're going to feel like, oh my goodness, what's this? What's this magic? What's this wizardry? What's this sorcery? Because they were put on pause. We'll get into that a bit more a bit later, because I got some sources for you on that. Okay, so we've also got okay, I've got to do a quick shout out for super chat. Thank you so very much. Trap Effects, with the £1.99 super chat. Triller. He says, what's your thought on my DM question? I can't remember which one specifically you're talking about, Trap, but you're gonna have to state it again in the chat there, and then I'll get to you on that. But shout out to Trap Effects with a super chat in there, with £2 super chat. But that's what was going on. And so I just wanted to point that out. Get that book, King Leopold's Ghost. It's a brilliant read. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant read. Okay. There's also this point I want to make about what the man Bolsen is saying. Bolsen said, I don't know if you guys caught that, but earlier he said, let me go back to it. Let me rewind, because some of you are talking about rewinding anyway in the chat, because he was just dropping straight fire after fire, So I'm gonna have to just go back a bit, because you
slavery from mass murder and crime. This is just the historical reality. Because of the subjugation of Africa, first through chattel slavery, the extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources.
Okay. So I'm gonna play again.
The West has been able to maintain this artificial, unearned status as a so-called civilization, keeping Africa subject, subordinate, suppressed, and impoverished is an existential need for the West. It's the only way that they can keep up the pretense of their supremacy. Because again, the pretense of their supremacy has never been based upon any actual advancement, any actual sophistication, any actual moral or intellectual development. It has always been based on the violent accumulation of wealth and resources, upon brute power, deceit, and conniving. And Africa, the subjugation of Africa, is the most vital necessity for keeping this con going.
All right, talk to me now. Those of you who think, oh, blah blah blah, don't trust him, talk to me now. That is not. Forget your personal opinions about the guy. The guy is dropping some heat there. He's dropping some heat, you know. And again, he articulates it so well, and it's powerful coming from him because he's no holds barred, and he's like, it's a man speaking from a perspective of someone who's a Caucasian individual who's seen it, and he's not pulling any punches when he's seen it. He's not, it's very easy. It's very easy to say, oh, this is coming from a white savior, but actually, how many people from that extraction can actually be this brutally honest about what their civilization, quote unquote, has done, to others? It's very, very rare. At the very most, you'll get things that say, oh yeah, it was bad what we did, but we did reform. We did end slavery eventually, and actually, you guys sold slaves too. You guys sold slaves. Don't forget that. Let's not forget that. That's the most you get. This is a guy who's actually saying, no, that's stupid. Let's put that aside. Everything we have was done by trickery, was gained by trickery. Let me give you an example. So you take that example I gave you earlier about like connecting yourself up to some electric contraption and telling the locals that you're God or whatever. Okay, take that and put that to one side. Put that in your pocket. All right, I'm gonna give you another one in terms of deceit. Okay, right. We have a civilization, quote unquote, that I don't know if you ever read a book by Chinua Achebe called Things Fall Apart. Again, that book is on par with any work that Shakespeare ever wrote, any work that any great titan of English literature ever wrote. Read Things Fall Apart. It's a brilliant work of literature. Absolutely brilliant from start to finish. Okay? Now, in Things Fall Apart, the main character comes a proud, strong image of masculinity, is brought down not by meeting another proud, strong image of masculinity and equal match in warfare, in battle. No. How he's defeated is actually Chinua Achebe taps into a tactic that the British used again and again and again for Africa. Okonkwo says, I really hate these people. They're ruining how things are. They're changing the way we thought they came in. We thought they were clowns at first, but they're more dangerous than we thought they were. And we're gonna wage war. But what happens is the British says, okay, look. We hear you don't want to pay these taxes. We hear you don't want to be under us. Okay, we don't want any trouble with you. Please come. Let's sit at the table. Here's the place, the time and date. Come meet us at the table, and we'll talk about this. And Okonkwo gets the chiefs and the elders in his town, in the city, and they march towards where the white man wants to have this talk with them. And like was done with many a sort of a peace meeting or treaty dealing, the British, with their guns, manned by blacks from another part of Africa who had no sort of affinity with the blacks in that part of the world, would lock up these individuals. They would turn up. Okay, let's talk. What's on the table? And the British would surround them with more soldiers and more men with their Maxim guns, and would say, right, you're not going anywhere. That's it. That's the end of that. And they would hold these kings and chiefs and elders, they would hold them hostage. Some of them died in captivity. Some of them were executed. Some of them were shipped off. Or I think King Ovawamren. Shout out in the chat if you know who I'm talking about there, if you know a bit of Nigerian history. King Ovawamrem, the last great king of Benin. This is how he was ended. I think they captured him like that, pretending to want to. This is what Shahid's talking about. We're not talking about uh, a sort of and I know some people might say this has happened all the time, art of war, you deceive and all not. But I'm sorry, but when when people are meeting you, like, look, let's look at what happened to Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint Louverture was told, come to Paris, you've beaten us, man for man, you've actually defeated the mighty French. That's respect. Look at what the Zulus did. Compare what the Zulus did with what happened with Toussaint Louverture. The Zulus are defeated, and if you've ever seen that film, that classic film Zulu, they sing a proud song for the British to say, look, well done, you actually bested us in battle, well done. Never mind the fact that you had these machine guns. If that even happened, I doubt that happened, but at the end of the film, that's what's supposed to have happened. The Zulus, out of some African sense of sportsmanship, sang the British. Now, the British, the French, let's go back about almost 100 years to 18 whatever, early 1800s. And the French have been bested by Toussaint Louverture's slave uprising in Haiti. And they say, okay, look, Toussaint, come over here to France or Paris, and let's talk. Man over mano, let's talk about what you want for your Haiti. Toussaint was told, do not go. Don't trust these people. This is all deceit. This is trickery. Toussaint said, for some reason, we don't know. We don't know why, but Toussaint got on the ship and he went to France and he never saw Haiti again. He was arrested. He was locked up, and that was it. And he died in captivity somewhere in France. That was it. He turned up in France thinking he was there to actually parry with the French, to parlay with the French, like, as an equal. And they put it's sad. I shouldn't be laughing. It's sad. But this is what Shahid's talking about when he says trickery. It's not a lot of what the West has achieved hasn't been achieved. Retrospectively, the historians like to write as if I remember watching a documentary years and years back. It was a Channel 4 documentary. Shout out to Channel 4. I don't know if everyone knows Channel 4 in the chat. Got some Brits listening. I know most of our listeners and watchers watching from America, but press 1 in the chat if you know about Channel 4. They did a really great, in terms of production values, they did an amazing documentary. Niall Ferguson is this English guy in the UK, and it talked about how the West was this and how the West was that, how the West conquered the world. And back then I was not woke. I was not in the proper sense of that word. I didn't know what was going down. I watched and I was impressed. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is what we need to be doing as Africans and other places in the world. This is what we need to be implementing. What Niall Ferguson left out was a lot of the deceit. In the documentary that was well produced and that showed how the British had, thank you, Him, in a documentary that showed you how the British and Western Europe was like innately just superior because they were hardworking and intuitive and ingenious. It left out all the little tricks they played on people minding their own business thousands of miles in another side of the globe. It left out all those little tricks that they played to it just left all that bit out, So, but that's what Shahid's talking about when he talks about the deceit. But then when they like to talk, when they rewrite the history, they leave out these nasty tricks. They leave out these nasty sort of foul play that they play, these fake news that they propagated, this just very, very underhanded dealings that they propagated across the world on the way to get there, with people that with people that dealt with them as if, okay, we're dealing with honest individuals. That's what Shahed is talking. That's what he's exposing it when he talks about they achieved it by deceit and trickery. Excuse me. Right. He also talks about. Let me do a super chat. Trap Effect says, "Thank you so much, Trap Effects, for £5 super chat." Trap Effect says, "Was the TAS a get back? Okay, so the transatlantic slave trade, was transatlantic slavery, was that a get back for Moorish occupation? Remember the Papal Bull 1452 signed by the Catholics? Don't forget Mauritania 1441 incident." I don't know what the 1441 incident is. Forgive my ignorance on that. I might know it under another name. Yeah, forgive my ignorance on that. But I'm starting to believe that. Not even starting to believe it. I actually do believe it. I believe part of the motivation behind the transatlantic slave trade was a way of, you've got this continent that's brimming with people and aggressive people, um um brilliant people and equally brilliant people, let's say, at least. Let's not give them the excuse of saying that we are uh we're just as nationalistic or whatever. Let's say, okay, fine, and equally brilliant people, but you got those people on your doorstep dominating you for the best part of 1,000 years. Of course, slavery and the transatlantic slavery and the ruthlessness with which the transatlantic slave trade was pursued. Read Walter Rodney's book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Read that book. He shows you how the effects that the transatlantic slave trade had on stunting Africa. He talks about it in real numbers, with real numbers, citing real studies and everything. It's absolutely brilliant book. I gotta read out another super chat. We got Jay Merhead. It's a super sticker, actually, not super chat. Thank you very much, Jay Merhead, with £3. It's just a dancing guy. That's just a dancing guy in the super chat, in the super sticker, a little jelly man dancing. But yeah, in answer to your question, Tropfix, I do agree with that. So, right. And again, another point that Shahed makes in his video is that well, actually, I'll just let him make it again.
I mean, right now, the trade relationship between the West and Africa is that something like 70% of exports to Africa from the West are manufactured goods, and imports from Africa are just the raw materials used to make those manufactured goods. So they're taking from Africa what is needed in order to produce goods that then Africa buys from the West, made with their own raw materials. And the West has done everything possible to try to impede Africa's ability to build its own manufacturing base so that they could potentially use their own raw materials, use their own raw minerals to produce their own goods. I mean, the whole process should be done in-house. It should all be done in Africa. That's what makes sense. You have the materials, you have the minerals, you can make the products. That's how it should be. Rather than giving your raw natural resources to the West for them to manufacture and refine and process and so on, Africa could do all of those things themselves. I mean, imagine the impact that would have. Where would that leave the West then? Well, they know that. The West knows that. They're acutely aware of their actual total dependence upon Africa. If Africa manufactured, if they use their own resources, their own minerals, their own materials for their own industries, well, the entire economy of the West would collapse. And with the collapse of their economy, their whole so-called civilization would collapse. Africa is the foundation upon which they built their house. So they know this. And like I said, this is why no matter what else changes in the world, no matter how power dynamics shift in the world, the subjugation of Africa has been maintained for over 800 years. There's literally nothing more important to them than this. And this is why there are very powerful factions in the West that want to destroy BRICS, and why they fearmonger about Chinese investment in Africa, and why America specifically is engaged in non-stop interference, covert operations, regime change, regime infiltration projects all across the continent. I mean, look at South Africa, the ANC, either out of naivete or corruption, or not.
Okay. Quick shout out to Tammy Dorsey. $10 super chat from Tammy Dorsey. I've not come across your name before, Tammy. I think I'm seeing you for the first time, but welcome to the family. Thank you. What a way to make your introduction as well. Shout out to you, Trill Black, and all of the young black brothers here in the US and UK that's bringing the truth of the anti. That's bringing the truth. Anti loves you guys, I think, is what you mean to say there. But definitely shout out back to you. Thank you so much for that. But a couple of things there before he goes on to talk about South Africa. Walter Rodney makes a point in his book, and he makes a point that actually, quite ironically, it was the state of how bad things was in Europe. Follow me here now, chat. Follow me here. It's how bad things were in Europe that actually allowed for Europe to get and the West to gain an ascendancy over Africa economically. So I repeat, I don't know if you're catching that. Walter Rodney makes the point. He talks about feudalism. He says feudalism was a state that we hadn't reached in Africa. And for the common man, feudalism is hellish. You have the lords on top and everybody else, no middle class, everybody else a peasant. And the lords can do with you how they want, really. You're just trying to farm the piece of land, a patch of the land that belongs to the Lord, so that you can eke out an existence for your family and your lot, your village, and everything else, money or taxes, everything else goes to the Lords. That's a very simplistic and butchered way of explaining it. But Walter Rodney talks about how that was an effective way for the powers in Europe to move people off land, manipulate people how they wanted to manipulate them. So, like when they wanted them in the factories, they'd move them into the factories. So, the workhouses. Read about the 1800s in England and across much of Europe. The existence for the common man was hell. Hell on earth. I don't wish to make light of that word. Hell on earth is the closest thing to the imagination that you could think of. It was a disgustingly difficult existence. But that was actually to the advantage of the West in terms of you could marshal your populations better. So for example, let me take you to let me show you what he writes in right, let me see if I can do this. Okay. Right. No, it's not really that. Okay. Anyway, I'll just tell you, I'll just paraphrase and I'll leave it at that. He talks about how feudalism was something that we hadn't attained in Africa, where people had the way things worked in Africa was that almost everybody had their patch of land. Almost everybody had their patch of land, and you farmed your patch of land. You farmed your patch of land, you got what you got out of it. Everyone brought their produce to a market. It was an economy whereby you chose your trade, and the sky was the limit for how well you did if you just worked hard for your own thing. You pay taxes to nobody. Yeah, thank you, surfactant, serfs, slaves. That was what was going on in Europe. But in Africa, we had a society where things were so darn good that the king couldn't easily marshal people around for mass war. He couldn't easily marshal people around for, right now, we need people in factories. You're going to go get your behinds in the factories at slave wages next for nothing, for just a meal, and you're gonna run these cotton mills, and you're gonna run these coal mines that's gonna power my ships, and it's gonna do this and that. We hadn't attained that. Now he kind of pines after it in the book. He kind of wishes he writes as though that's a good thing. But you know what? No, I disagree. I disagree. If that's what it would have taken to not have, like, I don't agree. I don't agree with his view of how history worked out. I think you can get to the same destination by a different route, and history just happens the way it happens for whatever reason. But that's ironically what helped the West gain an ascendancy over the rest of the world. And uh Walter Rodney makes that point very well in his book. And I'll let the video play.
Naivete that devolved into corruption or out of coercion or some combination of all of these factors, the ANC collaborated with neoliberal programs for 30 years. I mean, to one degree or another, for the last 30 years. But as global power dynamics have been shifting and the creation and the ascendancy of BRICS has been taking place, people have started to have aspirations. And more importantly, they've started to have options. And those options have made their aspirations actually achievable. I'm talking about aspirations of political independence, aspirations of economic sovereignty, aspirations of getting out from under the yoke of the West. That's actually becoming achievable now. So the ANC was facing, and they are facing, severe criticism and opposition. They were being challenged. And they were being challenged by parties that do not accept neoliberalism, neoliberal colonialism, corporate colonization. And the U.S. knew that eventually they were going to lose power. Eventually, the ANC was going to face the consequences of capitulation and collaboration, and they were going to be removed and replaced. And if the U.S. didn't do something, then the replacement for the ANC was not going to be an obedient client. Because again, South Africa has the option now not to be an obedient client of the West. I mean, as long as there were no options, then it wasn't that risky for America. Even if the ANC lost popularity, no matter who replaced them, they would have no choice but to capitulate to neoliberalism because there was no options. But there are options now. So you have the United States then backing the so-called Democratic Alliance, the DA, which is an overtly neoliberal, Western-aligned, elitist political party of colonizer collaborators. So the unpopularity and the opposition to the ANC opened a space for the DA to move into the government in the last election. So now you have this so-called GNU, the Government of National Unity, which is nothing but a neoliberalism light and a neoliberalism hardcore. It's a coalition of one party that was aligned with the West, the ANC, aligned with the West out of coercion or naivete or corruption, but which could have potentially been influenced by anti-neoliberal populist sentiment if given a chance. Now they've joined together with a party that is intensely committed to colonization, intensely committed to neoliberalism. I mean, they want to privatize everything. They want everything to be sold off to the private sector. They want to hollow out the government completely. And you need this radical neoliberal colonizer faction to be there because as the new options have emerged, you've now had radical anti-neoliberal positions being advocated and becoming viable. I mean, you're actually having calls for the nationalization of industries rather than the privatization of state enterprises. Well, the West can't have that. So they need something like the DA, the Democratic Alliance, to move in to try to avert the threat of South Africa actually becoming politically independent and economically sovereign. You know, they call it the GNU, but the N shouldn't stand for national. It's the government of neoliberal unity. It's a coalition united against the people of South Africa, in my opinion, in service to the interests of the elite private sector of South Africa and to the global Western private sector. The DA is a racist, Zionist, anti-BRICS, pro-Western colonizer political party, funded at least in part by the National Endowment for Democracy in the United States, which is nothing but a wing of the CIA, whose sole mission...
Right. So let me pause it right there and say a few things. So I don't know what's been going on in South Africa, but essentially, from what I gather, what he's saying here, he's talking about how the new government there actually isn't organic and is actually sort of a uh, sort of a puppet government. Now, what's new, right? What's new? I guess what's new is, from the little I know about what's going on in South Africa, is that this was billed as a government that was different. Again, what's new? What's new, right? But yeah, look, chat, inform me, please. Let me know what you make of that. I don't really know what he's talking about that's going on in South Africa, but one thing he does say is about nationalization. Now, do you notice that that always happens whenever an African like you tend to know when a system is legit, when a system isn't a puppet sort of a system in on the African continent. In fact, anywhere in the world. When you have Kwame Nkrumah, when you have Patrice Lumumba, when you have Steve Biko, Gaddafi, when you have any of these guys who come up and he said, you know what we want to do, we want to, like, imagine that Africans saying, no, 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 no. See these companies, see these gold mines, see these diamond mines, see these oil fields. We want them to actually benefit Africans. So we're going to take that, we're going to nationalize it, okay? I'm going to make it work for the people. That's when all of a sudden, oh, you hear in the news about how atrocities are being committed against some minority nobody ever heard of or nobody ever cared about before. But all of a sudden, we're all supposed to care about this minority because, I don't know, Kwame Nkrumah is oppressing the Tulangas or the... It's... And that's when, little old Mr. MPC or Mr. John Q. Public, sitting watching his television, his CNN, thinks, yes, darn right, darn tootin' right, we need to go and save the what's it again, honey? The Tulangas? Yeah, we need to go and save them. Those savage African governments doing it again. Very bad American accent. Shout out to Jay Merhead. He says their system is coming to an end. The more they try to hide who we are, the more we will rise. All roads lead to Africa. Amen. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. So, yeah. Autobot Jasmine 98. Thank you for that. He says, time to bring in democracy. That's exactly when it's time to bring in democracy. And that's exactly what I guess Shahed is saying is going on in South Africa right now. You got a government that is against nationalization, is privatizing everything. Oh, the West is going to be pleased with that. I wonder what I think it's Julius Malema. I wonder what Julius Malema is saying these days. I've not seen him around so often. He used to pop up in my YouTube feed all the time. So I don't know whether they've got to him or something. Let me know what's going on with Malema in the chat if anyone's been following South African politics. But the minute you have a guy come up and say, no, we're not doing any privatization where the stakes, and you know what? Let me just say this before I forget to say it. I don't actually even think, I think Shahed goes on to say, I don't even think this is a white-black thing anymore. I don't think it's a, strictly speaking, us them thing. Remember what I said earlier about feudalism? A lot of them people who are now shouting about how that are kind of getting some reflected glory of the Wests and everything, they don't know that their great-great-great uncles, great-great-great aunties died some horrible death under a mill somewhere. Just a two-bit nobody, pauper, peasant. Just to fuel this system that they feel so proud about today. Rule Britannia, rule the West, and all this rubbish. A lot of them don't know that actually they got blood that was sacrificed to this waste man, this rubbish system that's dominating the world right now. So it's not necessarily a black-white thing. I think whoever was in control of the system that we have today realized, okay, there's a difference between us and them. We got to gin up that difference in the eyes of the like just the plebs, the nobodies, so that they will carry on fighting this war for us. But really, these people were being used like just almost as bad as the rest of the world that was going to be exploited. You know, these people were just being used. Just you had people. I told you now. I did. I did a course in when I was in what Americans might know as high school, but here we call it college, not university, but we call it sixth form college. And I did a course in Eastern European history and Russian history, and it was so depressing. I mean, Russian history and Eastern European history is so depressing. We literally get the word slave from the word Slavs, which is just the generic term for Eastern Europeans, and the daily existence of a typical European, an Eastern European back in what 100 plus years ago, even just 100 years ago, was hellish. It was, again, not using that word lightly. It was bad. It was dreary. Um, but what they realized was they needed a base. They needed it to be good for the elites needed some kind of an ivory tower from which they could perpetuate their policies on the rest of the world. All right, let me just move on. I'm ranting a little bit, but let me know what's going on in South Africa if anyone knows the deal on that. I'm just gonna press play. Oh, okay, we got a super chat. Let me just read out a super chat. So Factant says Cecil Rhodes stole South Africa, stabbed all of the black kings in the back, and the British protected him. They're all cowardly backstabbers. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I know quite a bit about South African history, and yeah. So she wrote. Let's just say. Thank you for that, surfactant.
Is to advance American interests. So in South Africa, this was a regime infiltration project that was undertaken to actually avert regime change in South Africa, organic regime change. Because look, you can nationalize the mining sector in South Africa. You can. You can nationalize the banking sector. You can nationalize the Reserve Bank. You can do all of these things, and everyone knows it. It's not some kind of a mystery that these types of measures would be immensely empowering for South Africa. These are measures that we don't know whether they're useful and beneficial or not. Obviously, they are, and tremendously so. And that's precisely why these types of policies, these types of measures have to be subverted. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous for anyone in South Africa today to advocate neoliberal policies when we have in front of our eyes the catastrophic failure of those policies. I mean, nearly half the population is unemployed, over half the population among the youth. 75% of South Africans earn just the equivalent of $350 a month or less. In fact, roughly half of the population earn only $75 a month. And you're still going to advocate for the policies that got you here? No, obviously, if you nationalize, it's better for you. Obviously. I mean, empower the government with those abundant resources instead of letting foreign companies seize those profits and transfer them out of the country. I mean, if those revenues are going to the state, then the government will have the resources they need to better address the needs of the society. They can invest in SMEs, they can provide education, skills training, and so on, fund R&D. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but you're scared of what the West will do. They tell you that if you nationalize, then there will be massive capital flight, investors will run away, and so on. Well, think about that for a second. They're trying to scare you with consequences that they themselves will be imposing. They're warning you that if you do something that is in your country's best interest, they will punish you. This is very different from telling you that the policy in and of itself is actually bad. They're telling you that they will make it a bad policy because of what they will do to you if you implement it. You understand? These people are threatening you, and then you're supposed to trust their advice? The advice of these neoliberal predators? You're supposed to listen to them and trust their advice when they are blatantly telling you that they will punish you if you do something to try to make things better, to try to change things? I mean, they couldn't make it more obvious, their malice. They couldn't make their malice more obvious. They couldn't make it any more obvious how against your best interests they are. how much they put their own private interests above the interests of their country. They're openly identifying themselves to you as your enemy. You understand me? I mean, they're not saying that nationalization doesn't work. They're not saying that it isn't beneficial. They're saying that they will do everything in their power to make sure it doesn't work. They're saying that they will sabotage nationalization for their own sake, for the sake of their own profit interests. And still you let this type of people have a say in policy discourse? Well, that's humiliating. They hold you in contempt and they don't even hide it. I'm telling you, everyone knows what should be done in a country like South Africa, what kind of economic policies they should implement. And it's the same thing that many global South countries should do. Everyone knows the obvious economic benefits of these types of policies. And everyone knows that the only reason that you don't implement these policies is because parasitic, predatory, Western colonizing private sector powers will try to punish you if you do. I mean, for instance, the nationalization of key sectors in South Africa or in any other country, such as mining, such as energy and finance. This is essential to try to break the stranglehold of foreign capital on your country and to ensure that the country's resources are actually used for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of the domestic economy. Land reform. The question of land reform in South Africa is critical. This is a critical issue. There should be a comprehensive land reform program in South Africa that prioritizes the redistribution of land to the historically disadvantaged. This is basic and it's incredibly obvious. And once you've boosted the state's resources through nationalization, there should be a comprehensive social welfare system that provides for the basic needs of all citizens, including healthcare, education, and housing. This is, again, obvious. And finally, the government, of course, needs to pursue a policy of industrialization and job creation, a policy that prioritizes the development of the domestic economy. And like I said before, prioritizes the manufacturing of goods from their own raw materials, from their own raw minerals.
So again, I'll give you an example. What he talks about when he talks about privatization and nationalization there, you can look at what's happening in Niger, in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. So I take it the revolution is still going strong there. But quite early on, wasn't the French president threatening sanctions? And it wasn't threatening sanctions just because they had deposed quote unquote democratically elected leaders, basically the West puppets. No, it wasn't talking about that. It was when these new leaders started to take control of mining, of plutonium mining, uranium mining, all these natural resources. That's when the West and Macron started talking about sanctions. That's what Bolsen's talking about. That he talking about is so good. Now, so no, I don't, Jim Bob. Look, I don't think that's. I think that's a complete like red herring, as we say over here. BRICS is a red herring. Nigeria is they don't know what they're doing right there out there right now. It's a puppet government, complete puppet government. But I'll just leave that to one side. Let's give you an example, right? Give you an example of something that Shahid's talking about here. Of what Mr. Bolsen is talking about here. Look at what happened to Haiti. This isn't spoken about a lot. We had a troll recently in the chat talking a load of nonsense. Obviously, he doesn't know history. He doesn't know history at all. But or he does. A lot of them do, but there's some sick type of time. But Haiti just defeated the French, the most successful slave rebellion in the whole history of the world. Okay, they just defeated the French, the Napoleonic French army, and it gained independence. The world's largest producer of sugar. The future was all theirs, was in their hands. What did the Western powers combine to do? For the next 100 years or so, more than that, I believe Haiti was blockaded by all the powers around it which controlled the Caribbean. They blocked out Haiti from trading, selling its sugar. And now today, people want to talk about Haiti as though it's the way it is just because, well, 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 the black man can't help himself. um, Again, their rice industry, very recently, that was devastated by the Americans, dumping their rice on the market, subsidizing their rice when they saw that the Haitian rice was doing well. I don't know why. I need to look into that. That in itself is subject is enough to do a video on or another live one. The state of Haiti and why Haiti is the way it is today. But they do this over and over and over again, and then proceed to say, "Oh, we don't know why these African nations, why these black polities, uh, these black states, why they keep failing. We don't know." It's the perfect example is in that saying, throwing a stone and then hiding your hand. Haiti was set up to be something like you'd never seen in the history of the world. But, you know, the rest is history, as they say. Let me read out some super chats before I'm going to end this video. I'm going to go into a second video that Shahed Bolsen, like a lot of you that started this talking about how, oh, he's not really the one, it ain't about him. You might just be one round by the time you hear what this guy's got to say about my brothers in black in America over there, my black brothers in America. Okay, so Safaktan says, what bro Safaktan? Sorry, Trap Effects. Thank you so much for your £5 super chat. What bro Sir P said just reminded me that they had studied, observed the ancestors' sacred sites around Africa as well as items. If you know, you know. Certainly, if you know, you know, because I don't know. I wasn't paying attention there, but I'm guessing you guys in the chat know what Trap Effects is talking about there. Thank you so much for the super chat. Cycle Cinco, I see you in there. Thank you very much. He says there's a $20 super chat coming from the brother Cycle Cinco. Thank you so much for the super chat. The slave trade was also a sacrilegious endeavor of the royals of Europe, knowing that biblically the African was the chosen Israelite servants detailed in the Old Testament. Well, again, my understanding of the whole Black Israelites thing is expanding on a daily, but I've got my reservations on just this idea that everyone in Israel originally was black. I've got my reservations on that. Again, I'm caricaturing that. I recognize I might be caricaturing that opinion by claiming, I know that that's not necessarily what people who claim that Israel was black, that's not necessarily what they're saying. But I am coming across things that I can't deny as I dig deeper and deeper into who the ancient Israelites were. Certainly, I will say this: it would not have been an amazing thing to see a black man of any type, of any look or phenotypic variation, to see him walking in the streets of Jerusalem back in, I don't know, 2000 BC, 1000 BC. It would not have been a thing at all. So I will say that from what I'm seeing in my research. Right. Let me end this video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the second video that piqued my interest. And it's this one. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I saw someone.
Now, if you waited this long, this is the one. This is the one. Without further ado, here we go.
section the other day saying that, telling me that I shouldn't say the West, I should say Western imperialism to differentiate it from, oppressive Western policies. I saw someone in the comment section the other day saying that, telling me that I shouldn't say the West, I should say Western imperialism to differentiate it from, oppressive Western policies. Okay, I don't know if you've ever known me to be imprecise in my choice of words. I say the West because that's what I mean. I also saw someone saying on the same video that I'm just bitter. How astute of you. Of course I'm bitter. I'm a Westerner. That means that I was taught a fictitious story my whole childhood about the West. And I didn't actually get any sort of decent education until I was an adult. And it wasn't provided to me. I had to search it out. I had to find it out. It was hidden from me. And what I found out was that I actually come from a civilization that never civilized. I came from a so-called civilization that is identical to abject primitivity.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'll press play.
I came from a so-called civilization. That's what you would expect from people who were raised by wolves. It's like your culture was dropped on its head as a baby.
Oh my days. Oh my days. Some people not gonna like this.
The brain of this so-called civilization has a deformed amygdala. The prefrontal cortex of the Western mind is missing. It's like a psychopath. So yes, I learned that I came from a so-called civilization, a so-called culture, that completely failed to develop. We're like the moronic bully in school who pushes people around as a kid, never pays attention, never learns, never studies, and never changes. So that everyone that he bullied, eventually surpasses him in adulthood in every conceivable way, in maturity, in skills, in knowledge, in intelligence, in career, in health, in relationships, in everything. While he remains a stunted man-child whom nobody can stand. No one wants to be around. Well,
Oh. I keep seeing the 100 going up. The 100 emoji. Who's kicking? Who's hitting the 100 emoji? There's no other reaction, is there? There just isn't any other reaction that's apt. So, I'm gonna let the brother keep dropping bars. I'm calling him brother tonight. He is. Okay.
That's the West. Every Westerner has been deprived by their ancestors of a history that they can be proud of. A history that gives them a chronological record of their development, their advancement as a people. Because the West is just as primitive, just as barbaric, just as shallow, just as selfish, petty, deceitful, and immature as they were 3,000 years ago. So I say West because I mean the West. You can't divorce imperialism from the so-called civilization that imperialism emerged from. This isn't even just about the endless crimes of the West against the rest of the world. No, I'm talking about the whole so-called culture, the so-called civilization that has utterly and miserably failed its own people. You literally had to suppress everyone else, oppress everyone else, burn, loot, and destroy everything that everyone else had, everything that they built, that everyone else built, everything that they accomplished, just so you could try to make your so-called civilization look developed, only by de-developing everyone else. You had to tie that.
Okay, you might think this is just an angry man speaking of any extraction. Okay, but I'm gonna prove to you that what he's saying there isn't actually far off. I keep saying this, and I don't think people understand what I'm saying there. Like, it's not. I'm seeing this, and the more I'm seeing this, I'm thinking before people get precious, right? I know we got a lot of people that watch the channel. I know the main audience is the black diaspora, the black nation, the true black nation. But if you can believe me or not believe me, it's up to you. But I got love for everybody. But I think it's important to notice patterns when they come up. And I think one pattern, the pattern you can see with the West, it's not even a white thing. And I want to stress this because, again, some people get really, really defensive. They get really, really like wound up. They get really precious when someone like this, even if it's a white person talking, they get really precious when someone's saying this. And I can understand that. Okay. It hits home. Okay. Um, it cuts deep. But I like to say, let's put it this way. I think something happened. Someone said in the chat recently, shout out to TE. I just want to read that super chat quickly. Ancestors had systems that predates Israelites. Thank you for that £2 super chat. Ancestors had systems that predate. I'm seeing a lot of pounds coming in, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching tonight. It's the pounds that are dominating, I think. So thank you to my UK brothers and sisters for holding us down. But let me just say, it's not so much. I think the pattern I'm seeing, yeah, someone said in the super chat earlier, someone said something happened between the 14th and the 17th century. Don't know what. Shout out to you if you're the one that said that. I can't remember who exactly it was said that. But yeah, something happened. I like to say something. The something wasn't people. Something happened, and I think the thing that happened was, should I go there? I don't know. Some of you might not like this. I don't know. I'm talking to a black family here. I think the black family, are the woke to spiritual matters. So let me just say it. I think it was a spiritual thing. I think it was a metaphysical transformation that took place whenever it did, sometime in the last 300, 400 years. And like the manifestation of it is a system that we see today. These people like to put labels. They like to put labels on things. Capitalism, Marxism, socialism. But that's a load of rubbish. Think about it. What we're talking about is unbridled greed. Like unbridled hate and greed. Like nothing will get in the way of you're talking about a system that brutalizes its own people. And so in brutalizing its own people, what's it going to do to people that don't even look like it? It will not care. It will do far worse. And what Shahed says there is pretty key. He talks about how the West needs to put people, it's not enough for it to rise to the top. It has to actively put other civilizations down. And that's how it's achieved. That's how it's kept its dominance. And I think where I was going to go is I'm going to say Babylon. Okay? Babylon. And I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody. But again, I'm going to have to go back to my biblical roots here. Babylon as a system. If you read deep into scripture, by the time you get into the last few pages, it talks about something called Mystery Babylon. And I think we're living in an age that's dominated by Mystery Babylon. Press 1 in the chat if you think if you know what I'm talking about. Because this is like or New Babylon. This is like what we're seeing is not a system that's happy just to, there's something spiritual behind it. It's not happy to just rise to the top. Like the Romans, like the Babylonians, the proper old school Babylonians, the Persians. It's not happy to just rise to the top. It has to oppress. It has to be vindictive against. Talk to me, RJ. Talking about the Rastas now. Talking about the Rastas, yes. Yes, that's what they were onto when they talk about Babylon. It has to oppress people in a weird way. It feeds off like erasing people's history, erasing their contribution, making sure that nobody ever gets a leg up other than itself. Right. We had empires before, but no empire, I don't think, has ever risen like the one that the West has, whereby it does. Let me play you a video. Let me play you a video quickly. I hope it doesn't get struck down for copyright because it's got some music the uh in the background. But let me play you this video. This is going massively off topic now, but I'm just gonna let this play. And I want you to see this, what I'm talking about. I won't play the full thing. You can go and watch it. It's called The Unmaking of India. The Unmaking of India, how the British impoverished India or something. I'm just going to play that. I'm going to share the screen.
India's share in the world's economy was an astounding 27%, more than all of Europe combined.
All right, let me know in the chat if you can see that video and hear that video. Press 1 if you can hear this video called The Unmaking of India.
250 years later, India's share had dropped to less than 3%, and its people were left impoverished. What happened? Strap in, adventurers. We're about to dive into a dark and messy history. Welcome to 18th century India. In 1707 CE, the death of Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb sends the empire into a decades-long spiral. In his wake, an endless parade of weak princelings forced themselves upon the peacock throne. With the Mughal Empire teetering on the brink of collapse, regional powers jostle for supremacy. Land grabs and title claims, infighting and betrayal. India is vulnerable. The situation is so precarious that in 1739, Persian Emperor Nadir Shah invades North India and sacks Delhi. During this period of disorder, the British sensed opportunity. Leveraging their unique advantages as a foreign power, they bribed and blasted their way into a dominant position in the subcontinent. India was no stranger to dealing with foreign aggression, but the British were not like those who had come before. They were not like Nadir Shah, who looted and simply left. Nor were they like the Huns, who, while shedding Gupta blood, became Indian themselves. Yes, the British were different, for they saw India as an inexhaustible gold mine whose resources were to be forever extracted. By the time India won its independence in 1947, its native institutions had been demolished, its economy deindustrialized, its trade networks severed, and its people more deeply divided by caste and creed. In just 200 years of colonial rule, the India that once inspired the world was unmade. The halcyon days of India are over. She has been drained of all the wealth she once possessed.
That's an Englishman telling you what they've done to India. So this video talks about how no power before that dominated India just took out of it without like sort of integrating itself, and not just integrating itself, for actually, like the expression, a rising tide raises all ships, like also made India better. Like culturally, the people got richer. The political systems were enriched. This was what happened previous to Western domination of India. Okay, I'll play.
And her energies have been cramped by a sordid system of misrule. The deliberate bleeding of India by the British was so extreme that famed American scholar Will Durant referred to it as the greatest crime in all of history. So let's pull back the curtain and see what India was like before colonialism. In the 19th century, the American J.T. Sunderland wrote about the India that the British found when they arrived. India was a far greater industrial and manufacturing nation than any in Europe or Asia. Her textile goods were famous all over the civilized world. So was her exquisite jewelry and her precious stones. So was her pottery, her porcelains and ceramics. So were her fine works in metal, iron, steel, silver, and gold. She had great architecture, equal in beauty to any in the world. She had great merchants, businessmen, bankers, and financiers. She was not only a great shipbuilding nation, but had commerce and trade which extended to all civilized countries. That may seem like heavy-handed praise, but the record does show that pre-colonial India was a dominant manufacturing economy. Let's take a closer look at the textile, shipbuilding, and metalworking industries. India was a textile superpower for most of its long history. There were many textile centers in the subcontinent. Coastal Andhra was a block printing hub, for example, while Gujarat and Bengal were known for their high-end woven products. There was global demand for these items. In fact, India enjoyed a mind-blowing 25% share of the global textile trade by the mid-18th century. This thriving textile trade had knock-on effects for the entire economy. For example, the popularity of Indian textiles led to the creation of stable international distribution networks. By piggybacking on these networks, other Indian artisans could sell their goods worldwide at a reduced cost. As a result, many different industries flourished alongside the Indian textile industry. We know that international trade was conducted primarily along maritime routes, and so the Indian shipbuilding industry had developed into a behemoth too. A significant number of Indian ports were engaged in the shipbuilding industry. Dhaka, Masalapatnam, Surat, Calicut, Quilon, and many, many others. Entire rural communities were involved in the production and processing of materials used to construct ships. Quality was paramount. Consider the Bengali merchant fleet in the early 17th century. The fleet consisted of nearly 5,000 ships, each capable of carrying up to 500 tons of goods. These ships were constructed in Bengali ports by native artisans who had the skills to craft elaborate wood, iron, and brass fittings. According to one British maritime observer, Indian vessels combine elegance and utility and are models of fine workmanship. Merchant contracts indicate that Bengali ships were much more durable than English ships. Bengali ships had an average lifespan exceeding 20.
You hear that? Sources at the time were saying that Bengali ships were much more durable than English ships. So, in terms of maritime technology, they were even more advanced than the British. Okay.
years, while English ships were not known to last more than 12. Quite a difference. India was a longtime pioneer in the global steel industry. As early as the 6th century CE, crucible formed steel.
So what I'm getting at is it actually true that it was because of technological superiority that is it actually so the Indians were, it sounds from things from what I'm hearing that actually other people were just as, if not more, technologically superior in many aspects, but that still didn't see them going halfway across the world to places where they didn't belong and feeling the need to subjugate people that had no sort of a link to them. I remember reading about the Chinese, one of the great Chinese empires, and how the most in terms of global domination that it attempted wasn't so much as going over and taking over other lands, but it was going there with like ships filled with gold and different resources and materials, and wanting to trade with other far off lands with whatever they had, exotic goods, giraffes on the east coast of Africa, gold, whatever it was, on a sort of a level playing field, wanting to exchange. That was it. That was as far, and that was with ships that were just as advanced, if not more advanced, than what the West would have a few years later. That was China. So is it actually inevitable what the West went on to do to the rest of the world? Is it inevitable what Europe as a bloc, let's say Europe, what we also mean America, what they went on to do to the rest of the world, is that inevitable? This is what I talk about Babylon. This is what I talk about. There's something else about it. There's something like spiritual about it. And again, people in the chat told me to go there, so I've gone there. You know, there's something else going on. There's something else going on. Let me carry on playing Shahed. Oh. Before I play Shahed, let me just say this as well. Let me say this. This system doesn't just have to it's not just happy to be like higher than you. It also, like, look what was done to Black Wall Street. I've just started my research into Black Wall Street. It's something I've heard. When the first time I heard about Black Wall Street and what happened to Black Wall Street, we have to do another live about Black Wall Street. That itself needs to be looked at properly. What happened to Black Wall Street, and why really did they have to destroy it? Why really did Black Wall Street have to be destroyed? Because it was a booming, like calling it Black Wall Street is even an insult, from what I've read, it was a Wall Street in and of its own. It needed its own name. Okay. And it was within the success that it was breeding. You had white people, even white Americans, coming down to, I think it was in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, looking for jobs in Black Wall Street. That's how successful this enclave of blacks in America were doing. And in no time at all, right, like, you'll see the records on this. Well, it will have to be another live. I'm sure my American brothers and sisters know what I'm talking about when I talk about Black Wall Street. It was destroyed. It was leveled, completely leveled. Why? 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 Like, seriously, guys, why? I just want to know why. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? You know? It doesn't make any sense. Right, let's go. Let's go. Okay, I'm just gonna find that again.
Someone in the comment section the other day saying that, telling me that I shouldn't say the West, I should say Western imperialism to differentiate.
I'm gonna have to do that again. Sorry, guys. See, RJ, I don't even think it's something ill in anybody.
Someone in the comment section.
Shahed goes on to talk about that. Mr. Bolsen in this video goes on to, I don't think it's something in somebody. I think there's a spirit behind what's come upon the world. Because you can say it's ill in them, but actually that system's gone across the world now. It's permeated everywhere. Like, let's be honest, Africans don't want to hear about this. Africans don't want to hear about this. Like, they want to be as much a part of the system as like them are. I don't know if you catch what I'm saying there. You know? I don't know. Let me move on.
To destabilize and undermine and sabotage China. And they're totally surpassing. Today, they're surpassing you in everything. Their technology.
Sorry.
After generation. How do you sit on top of this? I mean, imagine you go all around the world and smash up everything that other civilizations built, loot what they built, pillage, steal, even steal their ideas and their concepts and their philosophies. And then you sit on top of this mount to tie their hands and miserably failed its own and miserably failed.
So I'm just going back a bit. Guys. All right. Right. Let's start from 2 minutes 41 seconds.
Failed its own people. You know, you literally had to suppress everyone else, oppress everyone else, burn, loot, and destroy everything that everyone else had, everything that they built, that everyone else built, everything that they accomplished.
Okay, sorry. People say I'm not showing the video. Sorry about that. Okay. No, that's not how I want to do it.
Just so you could try to make your so-called civilization look developed. Only by de-developing everyone else. You had to tie their hands and feet just to pretend that you could beat them in a race. And again, it's just like some dumb bully in school who cheats on his test, cheats on his homework. Okay, you'll get an A on the test, but you're still dumb. And you won't progress educationally at all. That's not going to benefit you. Your appearance of knowledge on a test you cheated on is short-lived. Whereas you can lock the smart kid in the gym locker, but he's still the smart kid.
Notice we had someone in the chat. They've been blocked now. I think I blocked one person myself. I took the pleasure of blocking one person myself. But I had someone in the chat saying, oh, you know, blame the white man for everything and this, that. And yeah, but now the black man wants everything the white man got. I don't just, it's the best I can do in terms of making sense of what that chromosomally challenged individual was saying. But no, that's literally what we are saying. It's like, it's not literally, but it's not far off it. No, if you want to be that absurd, we are actually saying, yes, the minute somebody says, the minute it doesn't have to be a white black thing, the minute someone from the global south, we call it the global south. I love that expression, first made known to me by David Hundian. Check out that live we did a few weeks back. The minute someone from the global south says, right, I'm stepping up, I'm coming, oh, I want the world to know, you ain't going nowhere. You're coming back here. We'll burn down your little black Wall Street. We'll assassinate your leaders. we'll 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 embargo you. All manner of like shenanigans will be pulled. That is what we're saying. So you can we wazzery yourself till the cows come home. But that is what we're saying. So you wasted your own time because yeah, you're just making our point for us and you got blocked whilst you're doing it. But that is exactly what we're saying, you know. So, but this is the gaslighting. This is gaslighting to the perfection. Whilst they're doing that, they're claiming that they're ridiculing it, they're parodying it. You know, that is what we're saying. That's what you man do. That's what's been going on. That's what that video about how India this was done. That's what that video was talking about. And until this is recognized by people in the West who enjoy the benefits of this evil system, you know, I keep making this point. Like, now we want to transition to, oh, sustainable living, but on the backs of who? Who's digging up? Who's digging up the cobalt? Who's digging up who's tearing up their forests, their natural wildlife, so that you can live in your fantasy land of sustainable development? Who's doing that? It's Africans. So what you mean, like? So you ain't seen nothing yet. In terms of the Moors are coming back. The Moors are coming, and they're coming. They're leaving Africa. They're coming in droves. Donald Trump and all these people talking a lot of ish. They have not seen nothing yet. Because anyway, whatever.
I mean, imagine you go all around the world and smash up everything that other civilizations built, loot what they built, pillage, steal, even steal their ideas and their concepts and their philosophies. And then you sit on top of this mountain of stolen goods and declare yourself to be rich because of your own merit. And imagine telling this lie to your children, to your own children, to your grandchildren, generation after generation. How do you think that's going to go? You didn't invest in creating actual merit. You cheated, you lied, you stole, you brutalized. And then you tell your own people that everyone else in the world has nothing and you have everything because of how much better you are than everyone else. How long is that lie sustainable? I mean, these are people who actually have civilizations, who actually created and built and accomplished and didn't just pillage and plunder. And there's still those people today, even though you have oppressed them, there's still those same people.
Good point in the chat. Good point off the back of what Shahed is saying. Ultimate Chakra says, yes, a lot of their knowledge was taken from cultures around the world. I had a correspondence with somebody I was trying to get on the channel not long ago, a professor, and just by a hair, I wasn't able to land the interview because of the personal things that the person was going through in their life at the time, in that moment. I might try them again, but a very, very knowledgeable professor was saying to me, go look into medicine, pharmaceuticals. There's almost nothing today in modern pharmaceuticals that's not taken from either African medicine men and their knowledge of herbs, okay, and their knowledge of, and this individual was citing books to me that I could use in future videos. Books, not just, and this is why it's important, because people think we're biased when we're talking about this. Not just books written by our folk, let's say, but written by people without the same skin color as us, saying these are the roots to this medicine and that medicine that's used it by Pfizer today, not just on the African continent, but in different indigenous communities where they go, they see these drugs being used. Go look up the Yohimbe plant. Look up the properties of the Yohimbe plant. I forgot what they call it in where I hail from originally. But that plant is almost a miracle plant. But you can't get that plant anywhere. Like you can't get that plant anywhere in Europe these days because they have a embargo on it. So they take the properties, they manipulate it, they patent it for their drugs, and now you have to pay like $100 a pop if you're lucky. Okay. Meanwhile, the actual knowledge, the actual place, the origin of that knowledge is banned because, well, insert your fake reason, you know, insert your fake reason. And that's a key point that Ultimate Chakra says. That's a key point off the back of what Shahed Bolsen's talking about here. And imagine what that would do. Instead of pointing people to the source of the knowledge, you go in, but you take this knowledge, you manipulate it for maximum profit, then you retrospectively ban people actually sourcing that produce, people sourcing that knowledge. You ban it, but you don't just ban it. Let's not even stop there. You start a propaganda campaign, claim it's witch doctorism, claim it's juju, claim it's voodoo, claim it's got nothing but it's got no merit other than hullabalooba or whatever derogatory. Think about the layers of insult to injury. Forget the layers of insult to injury. Think about the people that are dying that don't actually have access to the original medicine and have to take your toxic manipulation of it. Forget the petty insults to injury. Think about that. Anyway, let me stop. Thank you so much, Tammy Dorsey. Tammy Dorsey again in the super chat says, with a $5 super chat says, and there lays the problem. PC people refuse to hear the truth or educate themselves. Yes, that's why people are angry about this stuff, because it has real world problems. It had real world implications. This racism isn't just theoretical. This is killing people till today. Look up the Yohimbe plant. It's demonized now. It's demonized on you get some fake story about on it's up. What's the difference between the poison and the medicine? I heard this on some video. Shout out to some my friends on Instagram. Shout out to the family on Instagram who put me onto this lady, this Asian lady. She said in her speech, she talked about how the difference between a poison and a medicine. What's the difference, chat? Let me know. Let me know if you know. I'll run it by you guys. I'll see if you any of you. Dose, thank you. Surfactant straight in there with the answer. Okay, cool. You might be a brother in the chat. You might be a brother in the Instagram operating under another name, Surfactant. I know how you people roll. I know how you people roll. Bit like Shahed out here. Spooks. Spooks and feds. Who are you, Surfactant? Nah, I'm only joking. I'm only joking. So, it's dosage. Someone says dosage as well. And that's the thing. The Wikipedia page will show you how it's the Yohimbe is toxic. No, it's not toxic. It's toxic if you don't take in the right dose. If you don't know what dose to take, which is what the Africans know, which is what the originators of the medicine know. So that's all. That's all. You know, that's all. Yes, our Surfactant says, I'm just a retired PA. Yeah, you would say that. You would. No, I'm only joking. I'm only messing with you now. Okay. But it's just dose. But they demonize it as though it's not more than that. You know, it's more than that. Anyway, whatever. Let me just leave that. I'm getting all convoluted now. Let me let the video play.
And you're still the way you are. Wallahi, the West let its people down. The West let their own people down. I mean, a good example actually is African Americans. I don't know if you can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman, not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years. But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another, not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own countries, in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that African Americans have become a global cultural superpower. Culturally, they're a superpower. Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the global south, it's African American. And China, one of the most ancient civilizations on earth. Oh.
Did you hear what he said about my brothers over there across the pond? Did you hear what he said? I'll go back. Let me repeat that. Let me make like a
Become a global cultural superpower.
No. Let's go back.
Not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own countries, in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that African Americans have become a global cultural superpower. Culturally, they're a superpower.
No. Brother. Okay, listen. They're not become anything. They are. They was. They are. And looks like they will be. A cultural superpower. That's how it's always been. That's one thing I'm finding again. The deeper I dig. Look at Zaryab, a black man finds himself in Persia. There, he's making gains out there in Persia. They transfer him to North Africa. From North Africa, he's making gains out there. From North Africa, he finds. Check that video out that we dropped 3 weeks ago on Zaryab. A little biodrama, a docudrama on his life that I just decided to mock up a few weeks ago. Check that guy's story out, and he gets to Spain and he dominates musically, culturally. People are writing tomes about Zaryab during his time, about like this guy's skills with the lute, with music. That's us wherever we find ourselves. I don't know why that is. I don't know. I don't know. But that there seems to be a thing with music, and black folk. I don't know whether it's genetic. There's been theories about that, but whatever. But that's something that no matter what you do to us, which like you will see us rise to the top regardless when it comes to music, regardless of what you do to us. And Zaryab dominates. He influences European musical culture forever and ever, even starting off as a son of slaves. He himself wasn't a slave, but he was a son of. He was thought to be a son of slaves. But he's talking about Black Americans now. Isn't it funny, guys? Chat, talk to me here, chat. Isn't it funny how, I don't know if you remember, like a few months back, we had this controversy about the I don't know if anyone's a gamer in the chat, Grand Theft Auto, and the anti-woke brigade couldn't wait to get on their keyboards and tell us how depraved African American culture is. Look at what got in the trailer. Look at what's being portrayed in the trailer. First of all, Grand Theft Auto parodies. That's what Grand Theft Auto does. It parodies different cultures and subculture. Different cultures and subcultures. It will do trailer trash. It will do Italians, it would do Jews, you know, and but that was all lost on these people. They couldn't wait because they saw a few they saw a few blacks on car bonnets twerking in the trailer and decided this is what our culture's been brought down to. Okay, let's talk about culture. Let's talk about culture. You want to take a species, a small aspect of a culture, yes, that's been degenerated, okay, and you want to pretend because you got itchy fingers, you can't wait for your bias to be confirmed. You want to pretend that that's all Black American culture is. What you saw in a 2-minute video, like 10 seconds of a 2-minute video, is oh yeah. Let's talk about your jazz. Let's talk about this let's talk about the roaring 20s and all the dances that came out in that era, in that jazz era in the 30s. Let's talk about how, first of all, it was ridiculed and looked down upon by the grandparents of the generation that would then be copying it. And next thing you know, everyone's doing a little help me in the chat, the foxtrot, is it the foxtrot or the these little swinging dances, everyone and their mom's doing that, and but these people now want to talk about how, oh, the culture's degenerating because of these Black Americans. You can see in Grand Theft Auto, this is disgraceful. Let's talk about country music. Let's talk about the fact that in country music, even basic things like the harmonica, the Charleston. Thank you, Yanet Fari. The Charleston. You see everyone and their white mama doing it now. This is a black dance. This is a black dance, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's a black thing. I'm as far as I'm concerned, I'm not bothered. But where I am bothered is when people start to now come up and pretend like we haven't got any culture. Like Black Americans don't have any culture. Black Americans didn't contribute anything. All they contributed was gangs and drugs. Like, dude, when do you want to start? When do you want to start the actual? When do you want to start the timetable? How far back do you want to go? Your whole culture is Black American culture. Go to what you think is the whitest music ever, country music. That's Black culture. It was something as basic as the harmonica. The way the harmonica was used to mimic like a train rolling in. I don't know if anyone's seen that video on YouTube. The channel that went into where that originated, when the train rolls in. When the train rolls in and you got the harmonica playing, that was started by a black man, and it was what was the show? I can't remember now, but bro, RJ McKenzie, I don't know who's the Nigerian brother in the chat that's talking about Afro Americans don't have a culture, but block him quickly if I don't care who he is, who he claims to be. If anyone's saying rubbish in the chat, just block them. Okay, so even that is African American culture. Go to the roots of country music, you will find black culture, the influence of the black cowboys in that music, heavy, not like hearing dribs and drabs now. Yes, I'm seeing people talk about the banjo, the fiddle drums, the lute, all of it, the sort of offbeat spontaneity that's in country music. Okay, the dances. Go and look at it. And what's offensive about people talking about Black Americans not having culture and how they've degenerated culture and all this is that you look down on it when they were doing it. You look down on it when it began. And full circle, now you want to start to pretend as though after you've robbed, after you've pillaged, after you've taken from that culture. Shout out to Elvis there, taking American blues and repackaging it for a white audience. After you've done that, you now want to pretend like black culture didn't literally seed and permeate your whole culture now. That's when it starts to become a point of, right, a point of record. Let's rewind now. When you want to start talking about Grand Theft Auto, showing people twerking on a thing, and matter of fact, let's talk about that. No, no, you know, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it. I need to leave the. I want to make the video, keep the video PG. Okay. Um, let's go. Shout out to my African American brothers. That's all I gotta say. Rock and roll. Elvis is a thief of rock and roll. Chuck Berry is the king, says RJ McKenzie. Thank you very much.
Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the
Again, all this is only relevant. All this is only relevant because people try to retrospectively calumniate, um, libel blackness and black history and black culture. Things that your parents and grandparents, some of who are still alive, disdained, and now have worked their way into your high culture, and but you want to pretend as though that had no effect on your culture. It's just, it's risible to me. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
global south, it's African American. And China, one of the most ancient civilizations on earth, over 4,000 years as an organized civilization. You tried to destroy them, tried to poison that society with opium. America has tried for decades to destabilize and undermine and sabotage China. And they're totally surpassing. Today, they're surpassing you in everything. Their technology is better than yours. Their relations with the rest of the world are better than yours. Their economy is healthier than yours. Their schools are better than yours. Because they are a people with a history of actual homegrown accomplishment and development. And people like this, with a history like this, with a legacy like this, simply cannot be held back for any length of time by a people who do not have a similar history, people who have never actually invested in their own civilizational development. And that's the West. You're going to get left behind. You're going to get surpassed, and you are going to end up being nothing more than a footnote in history. Because the peoples of the world who have genuinely developed civilizations cannot be kept down indefinitely. No one, for example, bounced back from Western imperialism and colonization faster than the Muslims, because our foundations are too strong. Our history is too strong. Our achievements are too many. Our culture is too rich.
So again, you're talking about a white American guy here who's, in a good way, he's changed identities. Really, he ain't doing a Rachel Dolezal thing, but what he's done there is he's not seeing this necessarily as a black and white thing. He's seeing this as a Western thing. He's seeing this as an ideology. So that's why he can say our, because he shifted mindsets. He doesn't associate himself with this predatory culture that likes to whitewash itself in real time. So in fairness to him, that's why he's saying we there. He's obviously also coming to it from a sort of a Islamized standpoint. So maybe he's talking from an Islamic perspective there. So again, shout out to him for doing that. Shout out to him for saying that it's not a color thing, it's a worldview thing. It's a worldview thing. And what all he's saying is give people their due. Give people their due. This, what the West has done is to feed its people a lie about itself. Stop the lies. Tell, like Bob Marley said, tell the children the truth. Man. Didn't need the man.
Beliefs are too powerful. You could only inflict superficial damage on us. The whole history of Western colonialism in the Muslim world only amounts to a flesh wound. Our empire was never based on being a political entity. Political governance was a byproduct of belief. Our empire was an empire of faith. And that empire remains completely intact today. And it will always be intact. But everything that you call Western civilizational achievement is stolen. From your architecture to your philosophy. You are appropriators.
Ooh.
Cheaters.
Ooh.
Even your Greco-Roman so-called philosophers, who themselves took from the Egyptians, even these foundational thinkers of what you like to call Western philosophy, if it had been left to you, they would have all been left in the dustbin of history if it weren't for the Muslims. We taught you what they said. And when you learned it according to Muslim interpretation and correction. Their ideas passed through us before they ever reached you. So even your so-called enlightenment, your
Wildflower, you're going real quiet now. I know you didn't like this guy at the beginning. Wildflower, come on, where are you now? Where are you now? Because at the beginning of this, you were talking some straight up stuff about this man. And I said, calm down now. Hear him out. Where are you now? Where are you now? Because like RJ says, mic drop indeed. Straight talk, says Patrina Oldfield.
discovery that reason and rationality are things that exist. Well, you didn't discover that. We taught you that.
He's talking from an Islamized perspective now, an Arabized perspective. This guy hairy, man. Look at his hand.
And we were able to teach you that even before any Muslim ever read Plato or Aristotle, because the Muslims are people who have always deeply invested in their own intellectual development. So the Enlightenment, Europe's big eureka moment, was just copied and pasted. You're fakers. The only way that you can ever have an idea.
Did he have to say that? Oh my goodness. Fakers. This is what I mean. I disavow. Look, listen. Come on, Shahed, now. Come on now. There should not be this much bloodshed. Come on.
Is to take it from someone who has ideas.
It's the jihad.
And you've been historically incredibly stubborn about not developing, not maturing, not civilizing. It's really remarkable. I mean, look, even Christianity, when they tried to spread Christianity, even this corrupted version of the teachings of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, when they tried to spread this in Europe, they cravenly adapted it to incorporate already existing pagan ideas, polytheistic beliefs, festivals, practices, and so on, until it bore no resemblance whatsoever, not only to the, didn't bear any resemblance not only to the original teachings of the Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam, but not even to the version of Christianity that's followed in the Middle East. Your Christianity was just a repackaging of paganism. Because again, you are dead set against developing. You're dead set against developing intellectually, spiritually, morally, and in every other kind of way. I'm telling you, your ancestors have betrayed you. They betrayed you because they never bothered to invest in your future. They never bothered to actually create and develop as a people. And they only took and stole and pillaged and pretended. So they did not bequeath to you any sort of civilization that contributed genuinely to mankind. It's a so-called civilization only obsessed with destruction, with destructive power, with annihilation, with violence and death. It literally resents development. It resents advancement and creation and building and achievement. It's incredibly negative.
Okay, right. Let's take a breather. Because whew, my goodness. I don't even know how he's still on his channel is still allowed. I really don't understand, because especially when he starts to talk about Palestine and Israel. I don't know how. That's what makes me think, is this guy a spook? Because so many channels have been hit. Africa's Stream being hit recently. I know they said that was over Russia, but I do not know how this man's channel is still allowed. So it makes me a bit suspicious of him. But let me just go back to something he said. This man speaks about how the Arabs or the Islamic empires of North Africa, the Moors, basically. He doesn't say the Moors, but yeah, with the Moors. But this is what I mean by they're still doing it till today. You watch any good documentary on any well-produced documentary on Western civilization, like in the Middle Ages and this, they never talk about the elephant in the room. for like half, almost at least about a third of the continent. Okay, a third of west of the continent. Let's say west of the continent of Europe. Okay, a third of it easily is under foreign, what they would say is foreign occupation. And yet, and that occupation revitalizes civilizations that were like at death's door because the Romans have gone. The Roman Empire has crashed. They've With that crash has come the crash of a lot of knowledge and whatnot. But the Moors coming, they remind people. These weren't just like, they like to portray like the Arabic civilizations as brain dead, just head chopping civilization. No, these people, Averroes. Look up Averroes. What's his Arabic name? Ibn Rushd, I think. Um, a giant of philosophy, science in the Moorish world. And I've got proof he was a black man. We'll talk about that later in another video. Not just an Arab. No, this was a black man. I got proof like you wouldn't believe that they've tried to muddy the waters on. Averroes was the giant of Moorish philosophy and progress and West and mathematics and science. This black man, it was bringing back Aristotle, the writings of Plato. So they weren't just talking about their own writers, their own philosophers. They were engaging in a renaissance of classical literature, Greek literature. Thank you, Khalid. Ibn Rushd. They were talking about they were reinvigorating what the Europeans had forgotten about themselves. But you watch any documentary on medieval Europe and how it advanced out of the Dark Ages and this, and the silence on the influence of the Moors is deafening. Now, whether you believe the Moors were black or they weren't, blah, 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 it's odd that you could do a documentary on a part on European civilization in that particular era and not mention the Moors, not mention the impacts they had. Like, things were lost, completely lost, that were lost to the West, were kept, crystallized, reintroduced by that Arabic Berber civilization, that black African Arabic civilization in Europe. But you wouldn't hear that. Who does that? That's my question. Is who does that? Why would you do that? Why? All right. Cycle Cinco. Thank you once more. Says the first album, super chat, $5 super chat from Cycle Cinco. Message to us all. Says the first album with high gain, distorted guitar was dropped by Bo Diddley. With high gain, distorted guitar was dropped by Bo Diddley. I don't know much about guitar playing. But is that a thing then? High gain, distorted guitar. Bo Diddley. I have to look into that. Thank you so much for that super chat, Psycho Cinco. And I'll play the video here and now.
And dysfunctional. It's incredibly harmful. You literally measure power by its ability to destroy, not to create. By the ability to oppress, not to uplift. And look, before you misconstrue what I'm saying, this has nothing to do with skin color. It has nothing to do with your so-called race. None of this is innate in anyone's DNA. That's an obscene notion. Thinking that way is in and of itself symptomatic of colonized thinking, of westernized thinking. You know, this attribution of character traits to physical traits. The attribution of virtue or lack of virtue to genetics. Attributing spiritual qualities to superficial qualities. No, this has nothing to do with that. This is about culture. It's about the legacy of a culture that never matured. A legacy left to the descendants of people who thought predation and pillage was better than creation and innovation and knowledge. A legacy of underachievement as a so-called civilization that thought the ability to take from others was the same thing as merit. A culture that does not understand the importance of the means, but only values the ends, and thinks that if they can acquire the desired ends by vicious means, then they're the same as a culture that can achieve those same ends by honorable means. Like I said, it's just like a cheater. It doesn't matter how I win the race as long as I win. That's the Western attitude. So even if I win by chopping off the legs of the other participants, I can still consider myself to be the best and fastest runner. You see, even if I'm not genuinely an athlete, even if I'm not actually even fast, even if I never trained and I have no discipline and I have no ability, I get to call myself an Olympic champion as long as I can get that gold medal, even if the way that I get that gold medal is by shooting the actual winner of the medal and stealing it off his chest. Everyone has to prick.
And what have we been talking about all night? That's exactly it. That's exactly what we've been talking about all night. It doesn't matter how you win, so long as you win. That's been the motto of the West. No honor. Doesn't matter.
Praise me as a great athlete now because I have the medal. This is literally the Western mentality. That's a failed culture. It's a culture that has failed its own people. But yes, this is not innate. It's not inherent. It's not about white people. I mean, just terms like this, white people, black people, and so on, as if any people are actually literally white or literally black. You came up with these terms just to try to impose the idea that these are opposites, even though all people are actually just shades of varying degrees. You wanted to trap people by these fabricated definitions, these oppositional definitions, but it's all stupid. Again, this is your biggest contribution to humanity that really came from you, imposing a color code on the human race. No, I'm telling you this so that you can recognize that your ancestors failed you. Your culture has failed you. Your so-called civilization has betrayed you. And you should try to come to terms with that fact so that you can potentially free yourselves from it. Because as I've said many, many times, your own so-called civilization mistreated you before it ever became powerful enough to mistreat people outside the West.
That's what we're talking about feudalism earlier. If you just joined us, we spoke about this. What you just said there, we spoke about it in the context of how the elites within the Western context treated their own serfs, peasants, Slavs, where we get the word slaves. How it treated its own before it looked outside to start treating the rest of the world. This is that Babylon system I've been talking about. This is why I think it goes beyond color. It isn't about color, but the people who benefit from this Babylon system today happen to be, by and large, what we would call white today. And in order for them to even challenge this system, this Babylon system, with the rest of us, they have to not get, how do I call it? They can't be precious about recognizing this, that they're the beneficiaries of this Babylon system, first and foremost, and that it's unjust on the rest of the world. If they're even going to start to challenge it, without doing that, you're just going to keep living in your fantasy world, flag waving, rah rah, F yeah, USA, 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 USA. Like, all it's just like rubbish, Over here, it's God save the king, God save the king, yes, Prince Harry, Prince William is our king, oh, he's a prince.
They brutalized you and they brutalized your ancestors long before they ever reached out beyond their borders and started brutalizing everyone else. And even when they did reach beyond their borders to brutalize everyone else, they didn't stop doing wrong to you. And the worst wrong thing that they've done to you is to make you think that you're supposed to be proud of this history, proud of this culture, proud of this so-called civilization that has left you completely unprepared for living harmoniously with the rest of the world, living harmoniously with all of your brothers and sisters on this planet.
So just a quick comment on something he said earlier that I forgot to make a point about. In this power to destroy thing, he talked about how the civilization in the West is based on its ability to destroy rather than to build. And he mentioned China. Don't know if you guys know about how when I first heard about this, I was shocked. I didn't believe it for ages. I didn't look into it because I thought it was just someone talking rubbish. I thought that's stupid. That never happened. Not under Queen Victoria, great Queen Victoria. Apparently, the Chinese emperor at the time didn't quite. No one had given him the memo yet that actually, no. We surround your country. We've been surrounding it for the last few decades now. We own you. And he decided, he got a funny little idea in his mind. And the idea was, right, I'm going to come up from under the British. I don't like this opium, these drugs, literally like drugs, cocaine. Don't know what you'd call, what would opium, yeah, I think it's cocaine. Opium is being dumped in my country on my people. You should look into the opium epidemic in China in the 1800s. It was so bad. Men abandoning their families. Or has anyone seen Inception? In Inception, there's a scene that actually mimics what, like, these opium dens, where people are just sleeping. They're just in Inception. I don't know if people remember that film. They're sleeping. They're dreaming their life away. That's based on what these opium dens in China in the 1800s were like. They would just be men who had left their families for nothing. They're just all, the only place you could find them was in these opium dens, hooked up to these to drugs, and China was in an epidemic of it. And who was pumping it into the country? Great Britain, the British Empire. And they were making lots and lots of money off the Chinese people's addiction. Now, the Chinese emperor got a funny idea in his mind, said, no, this is wrong. And he banned it. He sent his ships out somehow. He tried to stop the British bringing the opium in. The first proper drug. When you talk about a real drug war on drugs. Sorry, not a drug war on drugs. The Chinese started that. And a genuine one now, not the fake one George Bush started. Okay? A real war on drugs. What did the British do? No, homeboy, no way. No way. They sent in ships to break the blockade and force the Chinese to buy their opium. No, John J, that's not that's not why you sell drugs in England. Let me tell you that now. You sell drugs for your own reason. This man. I hope that's not true, but anyway. This is what the British did. Also, fast forward about 100 years and a bit. Do you guys remember the what was his name? What was his name? The white brother now who came out with in the 90s, who came out with the expose about how the CIA was shipping. There was only one source for the drugs that were the cocaine, the heroin that was being shipped into the black communities. And he said he traced it to the CIA. He's dead now. Suicide, shot twice in the head. You know, that kind of a thing. Suicide dead, more like. Not long after his expose, he was suicided. And he was, he was offed because he dared to come out and say, look, this drugs epidemics in the black community is the CIA that's pumping those drugs in. But again, with that story, I couldn't believe it either till I looked into it myself years and years back when I was still developing my consciousness about all of this stuff. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Didn't make any sense. The British forced the Chinese with warships to buy drugs. Gary Webb, thank you, Sir Facton. Gary Webb. Oh my goodness, that guy gave his all. He sacrificed his life, just to get out there and tell the truth. Again, for a community that wasn't really his community, he could have just kept on walking and kept on quiet. So that's why we got to be careful. I keep saying this almost every live now, just because I don't like it. People like to say things like they're evil, they're this or that. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. It's not. It doesn't incentivize people to ally with us. It doesn't incentivize folks to ally with us, and that's really important because again, a lot of the bodies where they're buried are known by them folk, you know. And anyway, I don't want to preach too much on that. But he sacrificed his life. Yes, ultimate chakra, he sacrificed his life just to say, look, this is being shipped into the black community by the government, by the CIA. And that's what we're talking about. When Shahed talks about power to just destroy, that's it. It just destroys. And then what adds insult to injury is that after having destroyed, it claims that these peoples just can't help themselves. Oh, I just don't know. We just don't know how can we help the black community? How do we help them? How do we get the fathers back in the homes? And it's something that we've done surveys on and studies on. How you can start by stop shipping drugs in. You can start by not destroying their burgeoning economies. How about we start there? Gee Willikers. Gee Willikers, Batman. How do we help the black folk? Anyway, let's pray. Let's just press play.
This so-called civilization that did not cultivate in you morality or manners or sincerity or virtue or honesty or maturity or mental and emotional stability, not to mention spiritual peace and stability. It's a cutthroat culture. It's a barbaric culture, and it has left you completely at a loss as a people. And yes, it has made you despised. It has made you blamed, and it has made you resented because of your history and because you keep repeating that history with every new generation. See, when I say things like this, Westerners get defensive, and that defensiveness is symptomatic of exactly what I'm talking about. They'll say, let's not dwell on the past. Okay, let's not. Let's look at right now, today. And you try to show me how today is any different from the past. And this is why you get defensive. Because you know that when I talk about the crimes of the past, you can't with any honesty disavow the crimes of the past because those crimes are ongoing. And those crimes are protected precisely by your defensiveness. Well, this is a catastrophic trap that you're in. And you have to get out of it before you sink into oblivion. And no one can help you get out of it. No one is obliged to try to help you get out of it. You have to do it yourselves. Which again is not something that your whole culture or your so-called civilization has ever prepared or equipped you to do. That's what I mean about how a cheater ultimately only cheats himself. You know, when you're a plantation owner and you lose your slaves, well, you lose your crops as well, and you have nothing because you never learned how to grow anything yourselves. You're not farmers. You're like the king in Hamlet, who knows that he can never sincerely repent for his crime because he retains the crown for which he did the crime.
Oh, touchdown, because you retain the crown, proudly so. You retain the crown and you pretend like he put that well. I'm not gonna ruin it. At all. What is interesting to me though is he doesn't speak. He talks about the slave trade, but he talks about all these things. But like people have said, he doesn't talk about the Islamic slave trade, or the Islamic slave trade, the Arab slave trade, what the Turks did in North Africa, the Ottomans did in North Africa. So, you know, and people have said to me before that he is a bit like that. He will not go into certain aspects of history because it's uncomfortable for his worldview. Anyway, just play on.
And you don't want to relinquish your ill-gotten gains. You don't want to give up that stolen crown. So you get defensive instead of repentant. And there's no solutions for you in your own history. No return to traditional values or what have you. No, that's not going to help you. I mean, trying to go back and emulate the very ancestors who failed to build a genuine civilization and who set you on the very path to oblivion that you're on now, that's not a remedy. So-called Western civilization is a myth, and you're not going to find any solution.
In fact, matter of fact, let's talk about that. There's arguably more racism and more anti-blackness in the Arab world today, or let's say the Arabized world, because we know, those who know that the original Arabs were black people, were black African people. And we're not talking about, there was no one in the Arabian desert. People didn't inhabit the Arabian desert. There were nomads up and down the Arabian desert. We're talking about people in the south of the Arabian Peninsula, the Himyarites, the Axumites. Look at their sculptures, look at their language. These were a black people of a different extraction, of a different phenotypic variety, but these were originally a black people. So let's talk about Arabization. So in the Arabized world, where you get the people of mainly of Turkic extraction, really, who are now passing themselves off as everyone else. When in that world, he doesn't really talk about that. But that's an uncomfortable area for him, I should imagine, because because of his worldview. So it's not a full story he's giving. He's not giving you a full story here. There is a heck of a lot of, some of the worst comments I get are from people who's on the channel, are from people whose names are of some Arabic sound, or have in their display picture some kind of an that kind of look to them. Let's just, for want of better phraseology. Anyway, I'll just hit play.
As long as you hold on to any belief in that fiction, your history does not contain any guidance for you, except insofar as it shows you very clearly how not to be. You need to stop digging in those empty pockets. And if you dig into the pockets of Western history, all you're going to do is get your hands stained with blood. Like I've talked about before, your history, your origin, in the wilderness of Europe, it was harsh. You were in a harsh environment, cold and formidable. And you took the attitude, your ancestors I'm talking about, took the attitude that violence and dominance were the only means for survival. And this attitude pervades all aspects of your culture, from colonization to marriage, from international relations to relations between the sexes. You can go as deep as you want analyzing that society, Western society, and you can see how this primitive attitude manifests on every level of that society and that culture. And then there's all the lies that you have to tell each other and tell yourselves. Because the West eventually did encounter genuine civilizations, and so they wanted to pretend that they too were civilized. So they espouse all these values and principles and so on that they never adhere to and don't really even understand. And this is where so much of the cognitive dissonance comes from, because yes, you do have an untarnished human nature, what in Islam we call the fitrah, the intrinsic good human nature that's buried inside you. And that conflicts with your society, it conflicts with your history, it conflicts with your actions, and it conflicts with your ideologies. And you have two ways to try to deal with that conflict. Either you actually resolve the conflict, or you just plaster it over with propaganda and indoctrination and lies. But your culture is a tumor, and it will devour the West in its entirety, just as it devours the conscience of every individual Westerner, unless they undergo some kind of psychological, civilizational radiation therapy. Just as a body rejects and struggles against a tumor, your own conscience rejects and struggles against your history, your culture, and your so-called civilization. I mean, you're really in the same struggle as the rest of us, in a way, because the West has been a parasitic tumor on the whole of humanity for centuries. And we've been resisting it. And you should too. Because it isn't any healthier for you than it is for us, truth be told. And that's the only reason why I'm telling you this. But you get defensive. And you want to pretend that that tumor is actually a vital organ. Well, it isn't. You can, just like anybody else, you can actually change. You can actually become what you claim to already be. But that can only happen once you recognize and acknowledge that you aren't now what you claim to be. And then you can start learning, inshallah, from the people who really are the thing that you claim to be, which is civilized.
Okay, family, you heard it here. Maybe not first. Some of you have probably heard this man before, but I just thought that was interesting. I thought what he had to say about the black diaspora, particularly in the middle, was very interesting. Thought I had to bring it to the channel. Thought I had to bring it to the True Black Nation and see what you guys made of it. I'm not sure how many of us had heard about him before, but I've just come across his work, his speakings, very, very recently. And I just thought it'd be interesting to see what the nation made of it. He's got his middle nation. We got the True Black Nation going on right here. So I thank you all for joining me. Thank you, RJ McKenzie. Says it's the first time for him. Hearing about it. Thank you, Sir Facton. Says he appreciates me showing it. That's brilliant. I thank you. Thanks, Samuel Beats Minecraft. I've just seen you for the first time, I guess. Thank you for joining us. Ultimate Chakra. I think it's the first time I see you in a live. Thank you for joining us today, and everyone else who's been with us tonight. Thank you all, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to end the stream now because we are into the morning hours in the United Kingdom, and you lucky Americans have just started your evening. So again, thank you all again for joining me in this live, and it's been a wonderful one. Shout out to everyone that donated, that gave as well. That's really, really appreciated. And you definitely, in a tangible way, make this worthwhile. So again, thank you. Yes, thank you, and good night is right, Ultimate Chakra. Peace. Peace out, everyone. And Kush to Compton. This is True Black. Take care, guys.